What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to FudgeMuppet. I'm Scott here with Michael and Drew, and this is the Elder Scrolls podcast. But today we've got a special one because we have hit 1 million subscribers, and we have for like a week or so. But this is the official Q&A type celebration, kind of just happiness fest, you know?
Yeah.
There is 1 million people who still care about the Elder Scrolls, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty...
It's shocking, honestly.
No, it's pretty based, you could say.
And I guess we should be saying 2 words, thank you, for all the support over the years. I know we already kind of gave our thanks in the Spooky Lore Halloween podcast last week, but seriously, thank you very, very much.
If it's not for you guys, we don't get to do this, and honestly, this is the dream.
Mm-hmm.
We love it. So
and there's all kinds of questions being sent in about this dream, so we'll have lots to talk about, to reminisce about.
Well,
and of course we have lore questions and things like that as well. So
yeah, so it should be a bit of a mix. I made a post on the on YouTube, a community post, so we're drawing some questions from there, but then also on Twitter, made a tweet as well. So, but let's start. We can just sort of swap in between them as we like. But here's one that's not Elder Scrolls related, but so it's from Nadia C. What's everyone's favorite game/game series other than Tess? And a big congratulations, you guys, you deserve it. Thank you very much. But
thank you.
You know, I think I got some more confirmation on this recently because I spent a very long time on YouTube just watching cinematic compilations, but Mass Effect.
Yeah?
Yeah, I loved it so much. Unfortunately, in a different way to Elder Scrolls, it's not the kind of game series, well, by our standards, when I say you can play over and over, it's like, yeah, you can like 5 times, max 10 times, at least for me. But Elder Scrolls you can play hundreds of times, so it's different in that way at least. But I don't know, I get goosebumps, man, especially Mass Effect 2, the Suicide Run, the last mission. I watched a video, you know, it was like 24 minutes of cinematics in that quest.
No spoilers, bro.
Yeah, but that's a lot, you know, for just a quest with actual gameplay in it.
Yeah.
And it gets me going. I love it.
I had I don't know, like, because there's 2. I think someone else in another question has asked about like favorite sort of individual game, and it kind of changes because like it's probably a cop-out answer, but Fallout New Vegas is like one of my favorite like RPGs, like individual games to play, right?
I completely forgot Fallout existed.
Yeah, but
I took the question as what non-Bethesda.
Yeah, I guess so. Well,
FudgeMuppet type game. Otherwise, I'd obviously pick Fallout, not including 76, of course.
Yeah.
You guys are huge RPG guys.
Yeah, well,
whereas I'm not, other than Skyrim, really.
Super Mario 64.
That's up there. But continue, Scott. I'll get to my
Well, mine is also, I guess, my other thing's RPG. If I was to actually say a favorite game series that I continually come back to and always enjoy is actually Pokemon. And like I have since a kid, there's been phases where I go without it. And like, I don't know, it's just my like guilty pleasure. Like even when some of them are like arguably not as good as the other ones, I still just really enjoy Pokemon a lot.
Pokemon is up there for me, but it's one of those games where I don't really enjoy playing it that much anymore, but my love for it hasn't decreased whatsoever.
Yeah, same.
So even though I don't play the games as much, I obsess over Pokemon art and things like that. And I mean, if I do play, I'll go back and do challenge runs like Nuzlocke and stuff like that, where, you know, your Pokemon have permadeath.
How's your Skyrim Challenge Run going? What happened with that? Did you give up?
Oh, yeah. I was trying for a little while to work on getting a world record in Skyrim speedrunning, but it's like, dude, people are good at that game. It's insane that like the strats people come up with, because you can't sprint or wait in Sovngarde. Sorry, you can sprint, you can't wait in Sovngarde. So people will play the game and pick up wine all the way through the run. So they've got like 100 bottles of Alto wine, and then we'll just spam drink it when they get to Sovngarde. So you're just completely pissed off your head, but you're able to keep sprinting. It's like, man, people are
smart.
Insane.
You know, I thought of a thing, and I haven't watched a lot of speed runs, but I was going to keep it as a secret for some sort of Let's Play, but I think I'll just reveal it now because if this theoretical Let's Play happens, people will already have forgotten it. But you know Netch Jelly paralyzes you. It's the first effect on it.
Mm.
And so if you
Right.
consume Netch Jelly, you can survive any fall. And I wonder if anyone's thought of that for a speed run or something like that. But I went and tested it. And so I jumped off the throat of the world and you use Netch Jelly. And it's more fun too because you get that funny ragdoll with like stiff limbs effect, and you like roll down the hill really fast, and then you kind of just like T-pose back into like existence. Then you jump off the next ledge, hit Netch Jelly again, and go flying down. If you do it too much, you get that glitch. This is one of the worst glitches in the Elder Scrolls. You know when you're still, but as you try to turn, your character rotates instead of actually.
Oh, I hate
it's
that.
the worst.
Yeah.
If you spam Netch Jelly too much, you'll get that glitch. But
It will break you.
yeah, I thought that could be a really fun thing to do in a Let's Play without telling you two first, but I've just ruined it. I was gonna jump off like, oh, don't worry, I'll go and kill Mirak and like jump off one of those huge Apocrypha towers, but then survive.
Yeah, finding strange ways to get up the throat of the world without using the path that's there for you is really fun as well.
Ah, that's my first playthrough. Bad memories with that part of it.
But I mean, like, just briefly on the question, I'd say for me, like, RPGs, with the exception of Skyrim and the Witcher games, like, I usually play like either platformers or movement shooters. So like your Dooms, and there's a recent game called Ultra Kill that I'm just obsessed with. But other than that, it's like Ratchet and Clank, Mario, and obviously I'm obsessed with Legend of Zelda as well. So I'm more of a Nintendo guy, honestly, than a Bethesda guy. But here we are.
Nintendo Switch.
Yeah. Only other thing I mentioned this before, but like, and it started as a sort of like small indie game kind of thing, but Kenshi, which is another example of a hardcore RPG type of thing, but like,
I mean,
that's
we're
really
also big fans of Knights of the Old Republic. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's
game
probably some of the
series.
first kind of RPGs, because I think, like, when did that come out? Like 2003 or something. Like, I would have been like
couldn't
young,
remember.
like before Oblivion. I got into Knights of the Old Republic before Oblivion was a thing. So
Well, see, I never played it, so I'm really excited to play it fresh. when
it's
it
interesting
comes
though,
out
because it is a
remastered.
remake, so there's going to be some like liberties with like the way it goes. Like, it's not necessarily going to be carbon copy the exact same thing.
Yeah, I wonder if the lore, because you know how Star Wars lore kind of got considered, what is it,
Yeah,
legends or
the-
something like that. So I wonder how they'll deal with all
Yeah.
of that.
Well, it's kind of cool. Like, I hope a lot of it stays the same, and then they do, interconnect it with the new stuff. But yeah.
All right, next question.
Okay, here's one we don't want to answer, but here we go. Aditya Nadgowda, I think that's how you pronounce it. I try my best. Have you guys ever considered making an official Discord server for FudgeMuppet? It would give us a place to have discussions based on your videos and just Tesla in general. You can also interact with the audience on a more intimate level. Would love to be part of this if it ever happens.
Maybe.
We did a while ago, but like, the honest truth is it becomes this thing of like upkeep that we're not up to maintaining and doing and so on. Like, it pulls, it's too
There
much
is a
focus.
You need
there
to
is
have
a barren,
moderators.
abandoned, unofficial Discord floating out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like it was really nice. It was really nice having the interaction, but yeah, you kind of need people who are willing to uphold it and kind of make sure nothing, bad happens on it. And then, if you're not there, there's always risk that people, start fighting each other. It's like, I mean, it'd be really good to have, and maybe we will. But
Our mentality
obviously
as
it's
well
upkeep.
has often been that every hour we could spend, doing an extracurricular activity such as that, we just make a video. And we just do some really cool thing on the actual, YouTube channel FudgeMuppet. So that's kind of where our priorities lie, but perhaps we'll get around to it.
If everyone promises to be good, then we can just I could whip one up in 5 minutes and just be like, okay, well, there's a link in some YouTube videos if you want to communicate. Because I'm on Discord
I
all
mean,
the time.
we could put out there people who actually, like, if people were really keen on moderating it or so on, you can get a bunch of people that to actually like do it. You know what I mean? Like a bit more of a hands-off approach.
Yeah.
who knows,
Okay.
perhaps,
Well, look,
but-
there's probably plenty of people.
Send in
who
your
would want to
applications
moderate.
now. Go, go, go.
The lazy man's Discord.
Yeah.
You can have it, but you run it.
Yeah.
All right, what else have we got?
let's go. I'll stay on YouTube for a bit. Clint Eastwood, do you guys plan on doing more Let's Plays? I love those. Anniversary Edition is on the horizon too, so we can explore its quests in them. Def's something we could consider doing again. Like maybe
we have thought about it.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we'd want to do in terms of the scope. Like honestly, we kind of get fatigued with some of the ones that kind of go on for long periods of time. Like, you know what I mean? Like we're more like we much rather like, play it ourselves and create a sort of build or a concept and then give it to you rather than doing it live. But sometimes, like if it's a smaller one, like a 10-hour Let's Play, like, you know what I mean? But I don't think we'll ever do any long going
100
on.
episodes.
I like the informal nature of just kind of playing the game and hanging out essentially. But then, there's less quality control in that. Yeah, making a video from scratch will always be better quality to give to people than us just kind of talking crap.
But yeah, so there's that answer. Ebby Wright, if there was going to be a linear style TES game, where would you want it to be set, and what's your ideal story/themes for this kind of game? So
like very linear.
Yeah.
Story game essentially.
Yeah. So you could like you could be a certain character, and then maybe it's more action oriented or
a new Elder Scrolls Adventures game, basically.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I feel like I know your answer, Scott. Isn't it first era Cyrodiil?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, I feel like you could also do a first era sort of like Cyrodiil RPG though, with sort of like options and stuff as well. But like, there's like people go like, oh, like a Pelennal sort of action oriented one. There's that. But another one I thought was cool. I've sort of said before. I think it was in a video where we were talking about different ideas that because Microsoft owns Bethesda now, perhaps they could get other studios and stuff to do stuff. But like kind of like a Dishonored kind of vibe. Assassin sort of game story, but based around the sort of schism between the Dark Brotherhood and Morag Tong and the assassination of Ursula Shea and stuff like that.
I can almost imagine a game like that. I mean, less interesting lore perhaps, but the Elder Scrolls Online kind of like Daggerfall or High Rock Nightblade assassin vibe, with the mask and the daggers. You can imagine a game
kind of like an Assassin's Creed mixed with Elder Scrolls kind of thing.
This is a really weird one that I just thought of in my head. But I could imagine some kind of like story, almost horror vibes game where you're actually in Morrowind when the Argonians invade and it's scary.
Yeah.
Like they're actually scary and you're a dark elf and you have to like GTFO like just escape and like, but there's like proper like quests and story and you got to like I don't know.
Yeah.
Just brainstorming.
What platform would you do, Drew? If you like, how would you make it a platform?
I feel like no, it would obviously be. I mean, like you could focus more on combat if you didn't have so much like so much focus on skills and things like that. But I think generally speaking, any kind of linear game would be best suited to going back to the Malefic or the First Era, where things are a lot less concrete and things are much more magical as well. You can kind of just go crazy with a linear story without it all needing to mesh in a big open world RPG.
And the linear stuff too is like a lot of the reasonings we sort of give for sometimes why we might not like to go back to the First Era future games and so on is because there is more like limitations on the sort of creativity and things that you could do. For example, like you have a reduced number of races. Every single race, there's a lot of races that hate each other really early on. Like the whole idea that you've got this big sort of empire and everyone's sort of on amicable terms, although that's kind of changed in Skyrim a bit, but you know what I mean? Like reduced options, I guess.
Being a slave rebelling and like kind of becoming part of the Elysian rebellion would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, that would be cool because you could have a little bit of customization, but you'd have to be like a human kind of character, but then you could see the Pelennal, Amora House, the Elysia, like there's lots of, and all of the Aelid Sorcerer Kings and stuff. That could be really done well as like kind of almost a Sekiro-y type kind of thing where you've got this set, well, you don't have to have a set character, but like maybe it could be, but then you're also fighting like, you can make some sort of Dark Soul boss kind of vibes out of Aelid Sorcerer Kings and stuff, and like there's a lot of, you know what I mean? Like there's lots of potential.
Also, it could be cool to have like a Left 4 Dead, Vermintide style Oblivion Crisis game where it's like you go to a different region maybe, but there's actually a lot more Daedra coming out of these portals, and they're less goofy in an Oblivion sense and much more terrifying and swarming you, and you've got 4-player co-op taking out these
And
Daedra
you've got
hordes.
chainsaws and doom guns and
Well, with Vermintide, you got your casters, your crusader types, and bow and arrow and stuff. It'd be cool.
yeah.
All right. Well, let's go. Let's
Bit
go
co-op.
to the next one. Derringer HK. When do you feel was the turning point for making the channel your full-time jobs? Was it a specific subscriber count, good feedback, any video you made in particular? Do you want to start that, Michael, or do you want me to?
I don't know. It was always the plan, kind of like Scott and I, when we started the channel in 2013, we had the luxury of living with our parents, so we didn't really have costs or like need a job or anything like that.
But we were also like when we first started, we were both in school still. Like 2013 was my last year.
We were in
school.
school. We went to uni, and then we had to basically find a way to drop out of uni to pursue it full time without our parents
It's hard.
being too upset. So it was kind of always our plan, but it was kind of around the time that Fallout 4 was dropping that I think everything really changed, and we kind of knew in our heads, like, this is it. We either capitalize on this or we don't get to do this forever full time. And then after then it felt real.
It really was a turning point, because I went to uni with Scott, and I remember when you made the decision to abandon me and drop out of your degree. I was an idiot and kept going, and my degree does nothing now. But I also remember we went to the same midnight launch for Fallout 4, and you guys were like, yeah, we're going to go home. It's midnight currently. We're going to go home and play this for like 30 hours. This was before we were all together on the channel. I was like, wow, you guys are insane. But it obviously was the smart
I think too,
call.
like, it's hard to give this kind of advice because I don't want to necessarily feel responsible for decisions that other people make or so on. But for us personally, and, you got to consider all the context and everything, we have going on. But when we made the decision to, like, this was it. So for me, it was really like, no, screw uni. I hate it. I don't want to do it. I want to do this YouTube thing, and going all in. Once we made the mental switch, like, this is it. Like, it's like, it became all important. It's like everything was going in. It wasn't sort of this back end thing running in the background. It was at the forefront of my mind and Michael's mind, like, all the time. It was what we were going in to do. And that was sort of happened in the earlier portion of 2015. And then we knew Fallout 4 was releasing, and we were excited, and we're like, yeah, this could be a big break and so on. And then obviously we did that. And then we also, like, obviously we started with Skyrim builds. So we kind of went like all Skyrim, and then there was a big chunk of like Fallout 4 dominance because that was the new thing, and we were really into Fallout as well because we did New Vegas
keep doing
builds.
Elder Scrolls though. I remember we planned 10 Skyrim builds ahead of time so that they could continue to release throughout Fallout 4's release, which was pretty hectic. I can just say our mentality at the time was basically this: to get any degree, that's not, I don't know. There's bad degrees out there, but like a good degree, you're going to be spending 3 or 4 years at uni. You're going to be going there, spending a lot of money and a lot of time studying and, doing all of that. So our logic was, what if you just put all of that time, like, actually into trying to do YouTube? And in my mind, at least, I couldn't see how that wouldn't, like, not work. It just seemed like a no-brainer for us at the time that if you put in the same hours and the same effort, that it would be successful. Obviously, there's no guarantees, but that was the commitment that we were willing to try.
But as a question too, to like, obviously to full-time jobs, like full-time job is kind of, obviously it's like what you're doing, like fully focused, which basically means like, when is it financially feasible? But just remember that is variable. Like if you are single by yourself, and you're living at home, like that is a different number to do full-time job versus if you've got a family of 4. So that changed, but definitely for us it was when basically in the year of, I guess, 2016, when Fallout 4 was big and so on, and then there was Skyrim Special Edition, which reignited interest in Elder Scrolls, and we're like, perfect, we love Elder Scrolls, let's keep going with Elder Scrolls stuff. But yeah, that's when it kind of became feasible. I guess too, one thing I kind of like when people ask about it and financially, like the financial feasibility of YouTube in general, I do like to say to people, like, it comes a lot of the like money that you make comes from your backlog of videos and stuff too, in terms of like ads and stuff. So we on FudgeMuppet, we've built like there's hundreds of videos that exist there over the 8 years of our existence and so on.
Thousands, right?
Yeah,
Over 1,000. So that factors in. So you're not necessarily, if you go in and you just make videos, it's going to help you in the long run, basically accumulating and so on, viral videos.
You can go and make a YouTube channel next week and get 100,000 views on every video, and you won't be making much money. Yeah, because you'll have 10 videos. Yeah,
so you just got to manage your expectation that it is like a long-term commitment kind of thing. So you've kind of got to, before it, it's always the exceptions of some people just like overnight success, and then obviously each video they make rakes in like millions of views, and that's enough to like kick them straight into financial like security in terms of YouTube.
And I mean, a tiny bit of advice that just applies to everyone is that if something like this is your passion, then you kind of have to approach it at first, at least, like it is a hobby, it is a passion, and you have to do it with the expectation that this will lead to, like, don't be negative, but expect nothing from it and do it because you love it. And if it works, it works. But if you go in trying to make a video that's going to make you money, in my opinion, that's the quickest way to be like, wow, this is awful.
Yeah, I mean,
you've got to love it.
We started off too just wanting to share our Skyrim builds. And I remember, as far as financial ambitions were concerned, I can remember really early days just thinking, all I need is enough money to not have to do a different job. Yeah. I don't need lots of money. I just need enough money where I can say I don't have to go into an office 5 days a week, 9 to 5. Yeah. That's it. That was my that's all I wanted.
I served my time at McDonald's. I'm not going back to McDonald's.
But and one just additional thing, I guess, too, helping any people start is, we did, and this is what we did, we picked a niche. Builds. Like Skyrim builds was what we're enthusiastic about because we'd already played thousands of hours of Skyrim, like ridiculously. We're super into it. And then that translated to New Vegas when we did some of those builds. And then when Fallout 4 took off, our main bread and butter was builds. And that was our focus because we really liked role-playing stuff and so on. And that was the other thing compared to a lot of builds at the time, on YouTube at least. Not many other people went on a real role-playing focus. Like we tried to like create a backstory, and we sort of like, we'll go like, these are the quests you would do. This is like sort of this is the personality of the character, as opposed to just, this is the greatest warrior stats-wise. We didn't go with a stats zone. But that niche allowed us to get us into a position where we could, try other things later on. Like obviously we do lore and podcasts and so on, but breaking in with some kind of niche, you know what I mean? Something different.
Well, and role-playing is what gives these games legs. You don't play them over and over again because you necessarily want to be the strongest of every kind. It's like the reason people continuously make characters in ESO and continuously revisit these games is because it's so much fun to pick a race, to pick a culture, to pick where you're from, to pick your classes, to pick your factions, and to role play in it. Yeah, like that is the purpose. And even if we're doing less builds now, a big thing about the lore and really diving into that is that once you understand it enough, it just expands your possibilities for role playing infinitely, to the point where it's like, yeah, even though the games are old and we're waiting so long for the next one, it's just endless how much fun you can actually get out of them.
And I can remember as well, people back then when they made builds, like if there was a backstory, it was like one sentence. Another weird niche thing, and this was like, I guess this is all subjective, but I remember Scott and I, we were looking and we're like, man, everyone sucks at aesthetics. Everyone's build looks crap. Well, because like in terms of design, there was no flair in a lot of, obviously there would have been cool builds out there, but just, generally speaking, there was a huge lack of nice looking builds.
The trend was go for the best stats. So you'd have like, oh, here's a barbarian build, and they're decked out in dragon scale because it uses light armor. But it's kind of like, when change it up here, like people want the Conan aesthetic, or they want the living through an experience, not necessarily the best. So we like to work with the limitations of what's a cool look, what's a cool theme, and let's make it the best as possible gameplay wise, stats wise, so it's viable. But the main thing is the fun experience you're going to have of being this character.
You get capped out with effectiveness in Elder Scrolls pretty fast anyway. Like if my build looks really, really cool and the sword does 130 damage and your build doesn't look cool, but your sword does 150 damage, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, Like, we're basically going to kill enemies just as fast anyway.
There was another question from Sir Big Beard, which was a very similar kind of thing. Did you guys go to college? Which kind of answered. And
there's a lot of that.
Making the switch between regular jobs. Also, did you begin making videos as a hobby / time filler and it took off? We did, even outside of like the monetary kind of thing, like obviously one day we'd want to make it our full-time jobs when we went out but when we really started, we were interested in like winning at it. Like we wanted it to do well. So we didn't go in with like,
it was definitely a mix of both.
Yeah.
We didn't go in expecting to fail, but we did know kind of. Objectively is a bad word because, look, I'll just say this. According to other people's expectations, we knew it was a pretty pie in the sky type thing to achieve, but we just wanted to try.
There was a lot of self-belief, but that's so subjective. There's so many people in the world like that will believe in themselves and then it doesn't pan out. So obviously there's like timing and there's so many factors.
Here's a weird thing. Here's a weird thing. And this may not be like the nicest thing to hear, but you want to be the best at what you do. Doesn't mean your first video has to be the best at what it is, but you want to at least be able to look at what other people do, think I can do it differently in this or that way, and it will be better eventually. This isn't to say like our first videos were not the best things in the world, especially compared to now, but it's the taste. It's like anything, like music. Like you may not know, exactly how to make a certain song sound a certain way, but if you can at least know what you want it to sound like eventually as you acquire the skills to get there, then that matters.
It's kind of
like,
this is
like
a
you
really
have to pick a niche and look and be like, I know how to get there. At least there has to be a clear path.
There's that really like plain, like it's a really plain advice given to lots of artists or so on, but it is kind of like make what you want to see or something. Like we wanted those Skyrim sort of role-playing build videos that they did not exist, so we're like, I want to make that. Even if they did exist, you kind of, like an artist, like if you're interested in like heavy metal music, you're going to be listening to lots of heavy metal music and then wanting to make your own sort of heavy metal music and it's like that's your taste, but you can go you will always go further, I think, when you're like genuinely like passionate about it or really interested in it and so on, rather like, yeah. I feel like we've
final piece of advice before we move on to the next question. Unless you're absolutely hilarious or have the best personality in the world, don't try and do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Pick something and smash it.
Yeah.
Don't. And that to answer, we have questions. People say, are you ever going to branch out and do a Dark Souls Let's Play and do some Star Wars lore and do this and that and this? That's one of the reasons we don't do that, is because it doesn't tend to be the best at kind of, winning, staying in your lane.
Yeah.
While it may not always be what you want to do, one day you might wake up and be like, I really feel like making a Mario video today. It usually isn't the best idea if you're trying to build a channel.
Sometimes you can make those calculated branch outs. So really, if you're thinking about our builds and stuff, the big focus we all had was role playing, and then you get into the lore with the role playing, like connecting and making your character feel like they belong in the world. So naturally, once we got established enough, we were like, let's do lore videos and stuff. We really like it. And then we move into that, and it sort of feels like a natural sort of connection. And then obviously like lore and lore discussions is pretty much all we do now. And it's a big part of it. Obviously, it's also because there hasn't been a fresh Elder Scrolls games in a long time. There's ESO, but yeah, there's you'll hear more. We'll probably get a few more questions like that.
I mean, even ESO is 7 years old.
Yeah, which is pretty nuts. For reference, I remember the first E3 trailer for that coming out, and I was in school still. I think it was 2013.
Wow.
So, yeah. I'll switch to a Twitter thing. Heavy Burns said, found this painting in Oblivion. Don't understand the lore. Please discuss. And it's sort of like a Argonian doing something with a mammal of some sort. You can go have a look. It's pretty heinous, but
isn't it a Khajiit, or at least meant to be?
It kind of looks like a
different
Skiva looking Khajiit mix thing.
I always thought it was just like that because people
anyway,
I don't know,
actually
it's almost got some kangaroo leg vibes.
Here's a massive shout out, but to Heavy Burns stuff, he does like sort of mod videos and stuff, and like or overhauls and so on. editing is
Editing,
insane. It is so good. It is so next level. I don't even know how to do like
Come
a lot of
work
the
for
same
us.
stuff. But it's like honestly,
Come edit our videos, shoot a build like that.
because it's but it's really really good, and the presentation's really good, and the things. So, but like, there's an example of someone I think will like do well, as they're like, you just can't get that anywhere else. Do you know what I mean? Like that sort of editing presentation. So yeah, there's just, and that's like the niche he's kind of gone for, and it's obviously working, and like, yeah, it's just sick. So there's that. So there was, here we go. So Tom G, if you could take one component from another fantasy universe, like Witcher or Song of Ice and Fire, and bring it into the Elder Scrolls universe for the next game, what would it be? Huge fan, by the way. Keep it up. Thank you. So you mean like, I'm assuming what's meant by that, for example, if it was like Witcher, like mutagens or something, for example, the idea of something that's not really in Elder Scrolls at the moment and pulling it in.
Generally speaking, I'm not a fan of doing that, but I'm gonna try and think of something.
Yeah, I don't know in terms of like one component, because I feel like it has to be well, at least in my head, the way I'm interpreting, it's got to be like a decent component, not just like.
I mean, this is a bit of a cop out, but like pulling speech check type stuff from Fallout games is something we'd really want.
Yeah, proper,
Like
yeah.
proper dialogue stuff, being able to say, because you have, 60 in sneak, you suggest some stealthy approach to a mission and then actually get to change how that quest unfolds. And you could also do that with attributes, if attributes returned, which is something we think would be cool as well.
I could do an absolute cop-out answer there, and from Song of Ice and Fire there. You know how Song of Ice is very huge emphasis on the noble houses and stuff like that. If you've got a game set in High Rock and Hammerfell, they're absolutely taking way more of those elements and expanding the sort of nobility. I kind of like that for all Elder Scrolls, honestly, a little bit more. Like I talked about it in the Ideal Skyrim video, but instead of just being like this kind of vague sort of, not vague, but it's just like, oh, there's the Jarl of this hold. And, you know Thanes exist and stuff, but you don't really see any of them or see the interactions. But rather, I like it if Whiterun felt more like a country, and you have, the Thanes and the Housecarls, and this Thane owns this part and this part and this part, and then it all to the Jarl.
And they quarrel amongst each other, and you can choose who to help, and
Yeah.
maybe help one become Jarl and
Yeah,
things like
exactly.
that.
Like,
sorry, just before you go there, what was the question again? Because I have a feeling it might have said fantasy universe, and then I took something from.
Yeah, it
Fallout.
did. There's a component from another fantasy
Oh,
universe.
it's all right. We all know they're the
that
same
counts.
universe,
That's-
right?
Yeah, it's fantasy. it's definitely
Yeah.
fantasy. But yeah, no, exactly. Like, I mean, let's be real. A lot of the best games, obviously, you want to be original. But if a game comes out that does something really well, or does a series of things really well, other developers should be inspired by that and find natural, cohesive ways to implement it into their own games. Like, I think one of the reasons, in my opinion, Ghost of Tsushima is such a good game is because it took a lot of inspiration from The Witcher 3, did it its own way, and it's just a fantastic game. And I think the Elder Scrolls, if it's set in High Rock, could really benefit from taking elements from other franchises. Like, we've discussed this in our ideal Elder Scrolls 6 videos, but simply having like the ability that politics can come into play quite a lot, and having, like, depending on who you help, it sets your character up in a specific scenario where you have allies, you have enemies, you have holdings of your own that you wouldn't be able to have unless you made those decisions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I would say, yeah, political stuff, I think, is one that we'd really like. I think that's something I also liked in... even in New Vegas, how you have all these different factions and different like reputations with them. I like a lot of factions and stuff like that. Or you could look at like Morrowind or something. But Tristan Jetsam on Twitter says, have each of you decided what race you're going to play in your Elder Scrolls 6 first playthrough? And if so, why that race and what kind of build? Like, obviously, this is like a very distance kind of thing, and it kind of depends.
It will change so much the second I see the character creation menu, see how all the races have been overhauled with like new designs. And interestingly, I want to know what their passives are and things like that. Although I will say this just quickly, there's always going to be a temptation there to choose the race that kind of, the province is their homeland that the game is set in. So if it's in High Rock, picking a Breton kind of becomes like, oh, that would be a nice classic first experience. And in Hammerfell, picking a Red Guard and things like that could be interesting.
I was going to agree until you're like, oh, High Rock, and then Breton. I'm like, actually, I don't want to play a Breton first playthrough because there's not a choice.
What if they look more Manmer though? What if they actually look a little more elvish?
Maybe
because you're thinking of the pugs with
no. It's not so much. It's not so much that. I
Skyrim.
just think it's like the sort of, I don't know. Maybe it's like High Rock. It's kind of the same thing in Cyrodiil as an Imperial. I feel like there's so much. It's so cosmopolitan-ishy kind of feeling, and like I don't know. Like
that's I don't know.
because like for
when
example,
you say it like that, it's like Imperial and Cyrodiil is a bit like. I mean, I played a Dark Elf,
but it's kind of like Nord in Skyrim feels like you're gonna get a really Nordic experience, and the Nord really has to be there. For example, at the moment, how we understand Breton lore, you could be like. I feel like other things and you still feel like you fit in there. Whereas Red Guards, you'd be like, to be a Red Guard, you could really get in that sort of like Alakir sort of like, you know what I mean? It kind of, I mean, yeah, I think I would probably, if Hammerfell, I'd highly consider a Red Guard, but I might also just default to Dark Elf. And I will probably go some kind of warrior magic mix, like maybe add a little bit of magic or something. But sometimes I also do like to just go like a polarized, like warrior build or something first, or pick one kind of archetype and just sort of learn that well. And then later it becomes exciting when I do a magic character or some magic mixed character because it's this whole thing I haven't.
Knowing the lore can kind of mess with how you choose as well, because playing Skyrim blind the first time, I went with a Khajiit.
Same.
Joined the Stormcloaks just because it was the first option. There's like those who I encountered first.
Same.
And like obviously it's fun, but it's ridiculous. And I feel like for the most part, anytime I would start a new Elder Scrolls game, I would pick a High Elf because you also have the possibility of role-playing into like the offshoots of a High Elf. So say you picked a High Elf in the Iliac Bay, High Rock, and Hammerfell. If you pick a High Elf, you can kind of role-play potentially as a you've got lineage from the Dureni or something. There's lots of opportunities. But if it comes out that this is going to be a very linear main quest line, kind of like becoming the Dragonborn, but you become the sword singer who frees Hammerfell from Falmor aggression. I'm not really going to want to be a High Elf doing that.
Yeah.
So it would completely change my decision.
May I just ask, what skills did you end? Because my first character in Skyrim was a Khajiit who joined the Stormcloaks as well. What skill set did you end up using?
I ended up being... No, it was so...
Mine was bad, which is why I'm asking, because
Okay.
it's funny if it's the same thing.
Because I wanted to be a mage, but I ended up just using a sword most of the time anyway, so I guess I became a spell sword.
Right, okay, I did my build terribly. I ended up using like stealth and dual-wielding daggers, but then also using destruction magic, which has no carryover when you invest in sneak. And then, basically like sneak assassin. Couldn't really be a good warrior though, but also a mage. And I was wearing the archmage robes, so it was just like this cat in a poncho with two sacrificial blades. You know the ones the curvy ones. And
do you mean like do you mean like the archmage robes?
Yeah.
Because I wore the archmage robes and then one, I think it was Croesus or one of the dragon priest masks.
And a little.
But I
tail.
never play stealth. Yeah. Like everyone's like, oh, the stealth archer meme. I've never played a stealth archer.
I actually tend towards warrior.
It's pretty fun.
My first one was like sword, shield, heavy armor, and smithing. Like a straight up Nord warrior was my first one. I do kind of like, because I feel like it's the most like straightforward kind of basic play style, and I like to get like that first. It's kind of like I tend towards, sometimes my first playthrough is like Dark Souls. A lot of playing, like I was like super high first playthrough I actually went through, I had this really high strength giant axe and basically no clothing, and I just like to master the basic rolling, maneuvering, countering, all that kind of stuff, rather than like introducing the magic and other stats. I'll like do that on subsequent playthroughs usually.
I pretty much always do a battle mage. I think in Elder Scrolls 6 something that's tempting is to actually give me some Oblivion nostalgia and do what I did with my first build then, which is like heavy conjurer. Like lots of conjuration, and then generally you always end up with like one-handed or some skill in the background for when enemies get too close. Because if you waste all your magicka summoning something, you don't want to have to rely on on destruction and having more magicka there. Yeah. So if you can use conjuration and a blade, that's pretty cool.
That's almost certainly what I'll do in the Elder Scrolls 6. It's assuming High Rock and the Iliac Bay, like assuming we're pretty much right on that, I'll either be a High Elf or a Breton conjurer / if it's a Breton, it'd be like a conjurer / warrior, or if it's like a Durrani high elf, potentially a conjurer, because that does tend to be the most fun. But I think using magic is the most fun of the three options between magic, archery, and swords, or weapons.
I might just settle on. Maybe I will. Maybe I will go a Dunmer first, just so I feel like you could do a cool even if it's like some sword singer kind of vibe, main story or something. I feel like you could do it with a House Redder and Dunmer kind of thing, like a full warrior oriented Dunmer, and sort of like.
Let's just hope it's not a sword singer main story vibe.
Well, more Elder Scrolls 6. Wilburger. Do you all think Skooma in the Elder Scrolls 6 will give that Oblivion style speed boost? I pray to the Nine every day that this wish will come true. I hope there's these kind of things. It's all dependent on attributes, if they bring attributes back, really. And this is kind of why...
That's what I was going to say.
It's kind of like why we're a fan of attributes, is because once you have attributes, you have magical and potion effects that can modify, or enchantments that can modify those, and then it becomes, there's more variation and things to play with.
Yeah. It will just completely depend, I think, on if attributes return, whether or not Skooma does that or not. Which I am not too... hopeful regarding Bethesda actually doing it, but I would love it to happen. I don't know if they would.
If they expand attributes, it won't be to the degree of Oblivion and stuff before, I think. It will be expanded, but it will still... I feel like it will feel like closer to a Skyrim with attributes that better, sort of, but not quite like... I don't think you'll get...
Oblivions are not that complicated if you actually think about...
It's not the...
Get rid of the whole, level up thing where it's weird, how you trained is how many attribute points you can allocate to a certain thing. I think if it was just adding flat points, isn't it?
The way they tend towards it now is more so what I'm saying is from the game design. I think they will try and move away from sandbox silliness almost. So for example, you can be running across Superman and Clark Kent and Smallville and so on, and you're going like this kind of thing in Oblivion, right? But that looks silly, do you know what I mean? And as much as that's fun for people, so on, it's kind of why I think with Skyrim they went with you just walk normally and then you sprint, and adding the whole sprint kind of thing in as well, kind of making it sort of so everyone moves kind of normal and NPCs move similar. Because even if you arguably in Oblivion, some of the characters that speed around, you're that kind of looks silly. Sometimes when you got some higher level Bosma Bandit and they're it looks like they're running across the ground floating. I feel like it's not necessarily... I'm not one way or the other in my feeling about the thing. I just mean I feel like Bethesda won't foster that sort of sandbox silliness. Instead, they'll foster other kind of sandbox stuff like settlement creation and stuff like that.
To take in a completely different direction, if you're going to have a lot of foods and drinks that will just give you stamina buffs and things like that, I'd much rather they... With especially with skooma, but also with alcohol, is that just have visual or audible effects that instead of having a side effect of you get one reduced charisma or one something like that, have physical effects. If you take a load of skooma, then perhaps you should be hallucinating a bit, and you after you use the effects of it, you end up crashing somewhere against your will, and then you wake up a day later. Something like that I think would be
Top
cool.
5 things we want in Elder Scrolls 6.
Drugs.
Hallucination.
Yeah, dude, get high or drunk. That's my favorite.
They kind of did it. There was some fun applications. We made some builds around it in Fallout 4 with Jet and so on, actually slowing you down in the more visual kind of things. It's almost a slow time.
It was much better.
Yeah,
Jet in Fallout 4. I'll give credit where credit is due.
But do you know what? As a lot of responses to all of these Elder Scrolls 6 questions, the thing that's going to give us the most insight is Starfield. When you see Starfield and how expansive the attributes and shit with that, and how far it's going to, they're going to just basically how much they're going to lean into this role-playing stuff. Yeah,
they say they are going to. It's going to be more of a role-playing game than Skyrim, apparently. So if that's true and people respond well to that, it might be wishful thinking, but perhaps Elder Scrolls 6 could be... I feel like an idiot saying this out loud. Perhaps Elder Scrolls 6 could be more of a role-playing game than Skyrim, but could be.
Yeah, I feel like they might. I feel like also because they've probably got that sort of mindset where they want it to be another, game of a generation that lasts for 10 plus years. So, and, maybe there'll be content updates and stuff like that, a Creation Club kind of stuff or whatever. We don't know yet. But I feel like they'll sort of design it with that in mind. So they probably do want a bit of freedoms and such,
Yeah, just make it subscription based. Every week you got to pay another $30. So after 10 years, that's what he means by game of a generation. It's a game that will pay Bethesda for a generation.
Yeah.
It's sad to think that I would probably pay it. If it were, someone would just crack it and you would just play a non-updated game for free.
Okay. Here's a big one. It's a question and then another paragraph. So hold on. From Jabul. Aside from the Elder Scrolls, what other series have you gone down the lore rabbit hole with and really enjoyed? I know Drew loves Witcher, but feel free to mention that anyways. Also, I'd just like to say how much I appreciate all the work that you guys did put in the channel. It really means an immeasurable amount to me. Having my passion for the Elder Scrolls kept going by all the content you guys put out. From diving down the lore rabbit hole and reliving epic Bolivian quests that blew my mind as an 11-year-old, and they still impress me to this day. On a side note, Elder Scrolls aside, you guys are the best, and any content you're passionate about, feel free to go for it. If it ever feels like the well is running dry as we grow long white beards waiting for the Elder Scrolls 6. But thank you very much. I really appreciate that. But lore rabbit hole, guys, what are you...
So before FudgeMuppet, when I was just doing admin in an accounting firm and it was the most boring work in the world, I went so deep down the Song of Ice and Fire rabbit hole that I probably know more about Song of Ice and Fire lore than I do about Elder Scrolls lore.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, but it's a little bit rusty now because I haven't read the books in a little while. But yeah, I was obsessed. And I mean, it is pretty deep. Like, I don't think anything really gets quite as deep as Elder Scrolls, but I was pretty far down that. And I love Dark Souls lore, but yeah. Like that's great, but it's also great because it's so mysterious too.
When I was a kid, Star Wars lore I was really into because Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and the games and such. I was really into. Funnily enough, like I was into Warhammer 40k, the figurines and stuff, but even in time since then, a lot of the lore's quite interesting, and I've occasionally just gone down rabbit holes of lore for Warhammer 40k stuff. Trying to think what else. Like
I don't think I particularly have anything outside of, obviously we know a lot about Elder Scrolls lore and Fallout lore, and I kind of stopped keeping up with 76 lore after it just got weird with all the Brotherhood of Steel kind of stuff. And obviously when I was younger, like same as you, heaps into Star Wars and Warhammer and such, but I'd say recently I'm going down the real life lore rabbit hole, which is like reading actual like history and things like that. Often when you're doing Elder Scrolls deep dive stuff, you end up stumbling across real life stuff that it drew inspiration from, and then you go down that rabbit hole, and then suddenly you've read everything about some niche community from the 1600s or 1300s, and you're like, that was cool, and that's the lore.
That's probably, I'll probably give a similar sort of answer. A lot of Elder Scrolls lore has been a jumping point for like other like as a kid, I've always really been into mythology and mythology books and stuff like that. So really, like if you actually want to like
horrible histories,
yeah. So like, oh man, I had stacks and stacks of those. Like just
I've still got them. Yeah,
but mythology was something I was really into. So I guess some like real world mythologies and stuff. I guess also like I was pretty deep into Naruto at one point. Like I'm not up to date with it, but I was like know a lot of random stuff for someone who's I've only like watched through it the one time. Or I've watched several parts like over and over, but not the whole thing because it's a huge undertaking. But over and over. But yeah, so I guess that's that one.
Well, wasn't there a question that essentially ties into that about what real history, real world lore you're into? Wasn't there a question like that?
I do remember a question. It was saying like, what would be your favorite historical period? And I think there was potentially another question tied to it.
Was it on Twitter?
Just control
I only saw the
F.
Twitter ones.
I'll do it.
Okay, you do it then.
I only trust myself. What does Morden say before he goes up to stop the gym?
Something like along the lines of anyone else will do.
Okay, here. Pontus Person is not Elder Scrolls related, but I'd like to know your guys' favorite historical period and or mythological story. Congrats on 1 mil and thanks for the amazing content.
One period.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, if I had to pick broadly, I probably would have to say Middle Ages, as much as that's a very mainstream take. Like, there's so many cool things in very early Middle Ages and at the very end of the Middle Ages too. I don't know.
I'm kind of.
You go.
Oh,
you go.
Okay. I'd say for me, in terms of mythology, I would say King Arthur and chivalry. So like, you know, the way that he's kind of become this figure that's a conglomeration of historical figures that may or may not have existed, could be folklore, could be true, and it spans from Wales to France to all these different influences. And then you've got, you know, the kind of like this, after this great final battle, sails away wounded to the Isle of Avalon, and there's always the potential that he will return and unite the Kingdom of Britain after the Anglo-Saxon invaders came along. And I love that, because I really like, even though we know nothing about it, the pre-Anglo-Saxon England, when it was all druids and everyone was connected to the land. And then the Anglo-Saxons are awesome. They're so much cooler than Vikings, even though they're similar. But everyone obsesses over Vikings. The Anglo-Saxons are way cooler.
Dude, please watch Vinland Saga, bro. I think you'll really like it.
I will. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I almost don't want to play Assassin's Creed Valhalla, because everybody's so obsessed with being a Viking, just messing up England. It's like, dude, I tell you, the amount of culture you destroyed doing that.
I tell you what,
anyway.
kind of off topic, and like full disclosure, we were sponsored by Ubisoft when Valhalla came out. But I thought Valhalla was really nice.
Yeah,
I thought it was like a very, very solid, good.
I absolutely
Assassin's
agree.
Creed game. I liked it.
Do you know what I think it is? Is because a lot of people are upset with the way that it's just become sort of an open world RPG, but I think for you and me, we just really like that. So it's kind of like
I love the Black Flag, which was like, you know, swinging onto pirate ships, killing 20 people with, you know, just me. As much as I enjoyed Assassin's Creed 1 and Assassin's Creed 2 a lot, and 3 was decent. I still like the new stuff as well. Yeah, I've kind of just accepted that direction.
It's just a new thing. Like Brotherhood is still my favorite, and Ezio's story is amazing. But having it have this new legs of being an RPG game, they hold up really well. And like I loved Odyssey, and I will eventually play Valhalla, mostly to explore Anglo-Saxon England. But you know, like. Yeah, they're very good games, and I guess if you really love the old ones, fair enough if you're a bit upset about it, but they stand on their own, and they are good.
You will like the actual terrain and the ecosystems in Valhalla are nice too. You would think that England might, or maybe you wouldn't, but to someone who's not as super familiar with England, you can kind of expect the terrain to not have that much variety, but it actually does, and there's some really nice regions in the game that feel very different to other ones.
I think it's hard to pick a single historical period because there's two, but I do agree.
What about mythological stories? A lot of the coolest ones don't come from my favorite period of time as well.
Yeah, well,
hit on your historical period.
Well, I was going to say, in terms of historical, I was just going to say I do agree with the basically about 500 AD to about 1100, because I'm actually a big fan of pre-metal plate armor, even in things I like the sort of dark age, well, what they call dark ages or whatever, aesthetic and so on. And also Europe's such an interesting, just crazy time at that period, because you have the fall, you have the fall of the Roman Empire. And I know the Eastern Roman Empire, they consider themselves Rome, but we call them Byzantines, but all that kind of stuff. But everything, you have the rise of Charlemagne and stuff, and that's really interesting period. Plus you have everything that's going on in England, like you were saying. But even Spain and the caliphates there, and there's just so much cool stuff all in that period. But also the other thing, which is kind of hard, I do obviously I do like that kind of classical period, like classical sort of Greece and stuff, and Persia and that kind of thing. And even before that, I'm a big fan of Bronze Age kind of periods, ancient Mesopotamia and stuff like that. Because the further you go back, you get that ancient vibe. I really like that feeling of ancient, untouched kind of you don't know the full story. It's cool. But yeah.
And I mean, when you mentioned the Dark Ages, just a fun fact as well is nothing against the French. I love France and French people, but obviously when the Normans came over and kind of essentially took over as the head honchos in England, and the Anglo-Saxons were very fond of building things from wood as opposed to from stone. So the Dark Ages kind of happened because wood erodes, and we lost so much. And the reason we have the Lord of the Rings is because Tolkien was obsessed with like there's no like Anglo-Saxon heritage that we can draw from. Like most European countries have their folk tales and mythology that goes back thousands, hundreds and thousands of years. Whereas he kind of he wanted to make his own version of Anglo-Saxon.
Because a lot of it isn't Christian erasure. Basically, when they all converted, all of the pagan stuff got tossed, and Druids, for example, didn't write stuff down, and they were like oral.
Well, that happened even before the French.
Well before. I mean,
tying it back to Elder Scrolls, but that's what I would want to see in High Rock more. Like we talked about, I think in the Bretons video. Or High Rock video, which one was it? Basically saying like the Druids and all those parts, that were alluded to or mentioned in Daggerfall lore and things like that would be really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. But did you want a mythological period was something? Did you want to say something about that?
Story? No, I mean, favorite historical period I said was Middle Ages, from very early to very late.
I'm a big fan of the like Iliad and anything to do with sort of Achilles and Ajax and Hector, like any of those or Jason and the Argonauts and all of that. But a lot of Greek mythology really. But what interests me too is it's almost like, in a funny way, like I've heard comparisons. It's like the world's first Avengers, but they did have all of these were functionally like their superheroes, and they were all interconnected at times. It's like epic crossover, like this one, like, do you know what I mean? But it is really cool. I do like. And that's also, set in sort of like Bronze Age Greece, really ancient. But I do like it's just a really
pagan religions are essentially cinematic universes.
Yes,
if you think about it.
Yeah, there's the meta thing. It's like we're swapping out. We've abandoned monotheistic religion, came and got rid of all your big polytheistic religions and stuff like that. But I guess there's sort of Hinduism and stuff still around, but. It's wiped that out, and now we're replacing with superheroes. You will worship Spider-Man and Captain America. Dude, how absurd is that? There's a hero called Captain America, and like people worship an embodiment of this country. Yeah, it's insane.
Hey, unironically, he was you go through different periods when you're a kid.
Yeah.
I was always a Spider-Man kid, but there was this one point where I was a Captain America kid, and it was solely because of the shield. Yeah. Isn't there some meme somewhere where he's not actually Captain America, he's Captain something else? Like if you actually look at the design of his armor.
Like the where the armor's changed.
Yeah. Hold
on. Well, hold on. So Jonas, while you get that, I'll read the next question. Jonas, do you guys have any plans / ambitions for the future of the channel that has you excited? Ideas or concepts brewing in the back of your minds for something you'd like to create? Congrats on the milestone, guys. Much love from Norway. Thank you.
Yeah, just real quickly, it's Captain Puerto Rico was what I was thinking of. That meme. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know, like Elder Scrolls 6 and stuff, because there's things we'd like to do like in lore and stuff with those. We'd like to just have more I don't know, I've sort of like dipped toes into it a few times in the past with like some short story kind of things, and I did it with the recent Palinor. Like these are short stories, like you're looking at like 1,000 to 1,500 word kind of short stories. We did it the same for the Snow Prince kind of thing. But I do like writing those, but that's not. I don't know. I wouldn't call it ambitions. Like, I mean, a lot of those kinds of like ambitions. There's some really like I don't know. Give us a Netflix miniseries and we'll do a right one for Elder Scrolls, please. But it's like these are all like all the ambitions are like ridiculous sort of sky shot kind of stuff that you can't actually necessarily do. You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm just waiting for Elder Scrolls 6, like you said.
Yeah.
To just really, make a whole bunch of cool content out of that.
I think beyond simply playing it as well, the doors it will open visually for, assuming they give us console commands and stuff again, which would be a shame if they didn't. Yeah. No. But I mean, like the engine is, I mean, it's only an updated engine. It's not a new engine, so surely they will. But I mean, yeah, like being able to actually go and get really fresh, modern looking footage would just be inspiring in terms of how visually it would upgrade the content. But yeah, in terms of like making any content, like you said, Scott, I like when we did the Fallout Redemption series, it was really fun, and just writing narrative prose in related to the Elder Scrolls world is great, but visually it's really hard to give a visual for something you're creating completely from
I think
scratch.
that's the big component too, and then there's also the thing to consider too with like I guess voice acting or narration of things, and it's kind of it's just kind of different because you can't like you can't publish them as book because it's all Bethesda, you know, it's all copyrighted stuff and so on, or the universe and so on. So you can do it for, you know, we do it on videos and so on, but the video is not the best. Like,
I wish
it's not
we
the
were given
ideal
the rights
delivery
to do an Elder Scrolls novel.
Yeah,
I really
that
wish,
would be
because
awesome.
I mean, look, I can't say I read them, but the 2 Elder Scrolls novels, like, I've tried to read and I just really don't vibe them. I don't vibe.
The big and from a big thing with that too is like there's a big disconnect between people who really know the Elder Scrolls series and then those who are like enlisted to write about
but
it.
It felt very like name drop stuff too, like very like deep lore by using descriptive words to say this is this Khajiit or this, but it didn't have that like passion of, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to like be too harsh considering I haven't read the full things, but from the chapters that I have read, it seemed very like name dropping lore to try and like seem like it was more lore heavy than it really was.
Yeah, look, I haven't read them, but it probably is a case that say you've got, you know, say you pick someone who is a proven talented author and you're like, oh, hey, can you write something in this universe? Just do a bit of research into the universe first, obviously. But it's like, well, do a bit of research. That could take you years. You know, like we've been doing this for years and there's still things you learn every day about the Elder Scrolls lore.
Because there's so much stuff that you collect by like osmosis that's all around in the back of your mind, and that will come out in how you like... write the character in. But question from Jai, which is interesting. I've got to think about this one. But what's your fondest channel-related memory on the road to 1 million subs?
I don't know. It's hard to say. Obviously, I think that time period we already talked about right before Fallout 4 and during the initial release was pretty...
I feel like
awesome.
Basically November 2015 and December 2015.
It was that feeling of knowing we were going to make it. I think when
that was like pretty
Drew
euphoric.
came on was another high point because it felt like he's wow.
Thanks, babe.
But it
was
felt like, you know, that it's really like growing and that like, you know, I'd almost say as well, this isn't like marked by a specific date that I can remember, but I remember, Drew, when you first came on, some people, as you would inevitably have, would be like, oh, change, or like, I'm resistant to change. But the time when I could see in the comments that people enjoyed Drew as much, if not more, than us, was like really cool. I'm like...
That's a really good... I appreciate that. That's nice.
That was cool.
But yeah, no, definitely. Because there is always going to be resistance. It doesn't matter what channel, it doesn't matter what TV show, what form of media, you know. People don't really want the formula changed. And yeah, it was good because, you know, not only did you guys welcome me in with open arms, but the community did as well. So I've always had it very easy. You know, it could have been a real uphill battle, but it wasn't.
I'd say the 2 other fun things would be 2 specific Bethesda events. One being that one that Scott and I went to in Kangaroo Valley, where we hung out and did a bunch of random things like shoot bows and, you know, like archery and have nice food and whatever. It was really fun. And going to West Virginia, obviously, before I knew that 76 would be, you know, the kind of fail that it was, at least at the time, and to me still, you know, mentally.
Going to E3 with Camel Works as well.
E3 was a good one. Yeah, there are some fun event memories of like when we all went on a like adventure. PAX, there's some fun PAX memories too, and some fun memories meeting different fans and stuff. It's always nice to hear from people.
Well, here's a question, right? Here's Jack Smelberg. What has your favorite fan/follower interaction been since you started YouTube? And for a bit of a throwback, how is Giuseppe these days? And funnily enough, there are a few people asking about it. So I kind of forget that we used to have videos on the channel where there was some like vloggy style channel, like videos and stuff. And like we have a friend from like Michael and I knew him since primary school, and he's been our friend ever since. And he was just in some of them and so on. And then so there's some people,
he's an absolute meme of a character. So everyone wants to know what's going on. We're actually seeing him tonight,
yeah.
which is funny because we haven't seen him in a while. So we're all three of us are going.
There was a few that were asking if we stay in contact with him, and like we do. Yeah. But favorite fan follower interaction. Oh, do you know what? I had never been ever recognized, because I know Michael had before.
I've been recognized in shopping centers, before movies, at the gym. But you know when I've never been recognized, really? When there's a big gaming thing. Like outside that one guy who said hi to us at E3.
Yeah.
We'll be standing in the queue to try out Skyrim VR, and there's just hordes of Bethesda fans.
You know,
not a single one will recognize us. And then I'll be with you. You remember when we were walking near the beach, and it was like at like 8 p.m. we were just doing some cardio.
Oh, yeah.
And out of the darkness steps this guy, and he's like, "Are you FudgeMuppet?" We're like, yeah.
Do you know what, too? I think now, like, there would be higher chance now because we have a podcast that's such a regular thing and our faces are on it before. Before, our faces were more so, in a vlog here and there or something like that. But I know on the day that I proposed to my wife, and I was at Fitzroy Falls and everything, and I came out, and then and this guy he's like, "Oh, are you FudgeMuppet?" So I'm like, yeah, I am. This was the first time like I'd ever been noted, recognized in public, and he was from I think he was from Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan, and I think he just moved or on a holiday. I wasn't sure. I can't remember, but like that was just such. It was kind of weird because I was like, kind of had to go. It's like I've just proposed to my wife. Or my fiance at the time. Like I need to kind of like.
Yeah, it's weird too because it's like Kazakhstan would be a place where it's 0.0000001% of our audience, and then finding you in a somewhat remote though scenic place in Australia. It's such a random mashup.
So I mean it does tend to happen in weird places because obviously it doesn't happen often, but without being with you guys, I've only been recognized twice. And they've both been recently since the podcast started, and both times I was in the middle of peeing at a urinal. Both times.
This is true.
Yeah. And like when they've said Drew, I've been in the middle of peeing. Like, everything is out.
Cut midstream.
Hey man, can you just give me a sec? So, maybe it's a curse that anytime I pee at a urinal, someone is going to know who I am. But that's the only time.
I don't know what you did in a past life to deserve that curse, but
yeah,
must be interesting.
Here's an interesting one, and I have no idea. But Hannah458, what would you guys think you would be doing as a career if you never got into gaming? Also, what were your jobs before YouTube full time? Thanks.
Well, I didn't have a job, not really. I'm the youngest out of the three of us, so I started when I was. Gosh, how old was I? Was I 16 turning 17 when I was? Well,
because I would have been 17 turning 18.
YouTube. So, I was very fortunate in that respect. I had a few like side gig jobs that aren't really worth mentioning. It was like 4 times a year for some extra side money type stuff. But what career would I be? I don't know.
Well, I know
what job did you start as? You can say that.
I had a job, a night job stacking shelves at Coles, which is like a local supermarket in Australia, like a supermarket chain thing. And I did that for 1 year while I was going to uni as well. And then I quit after a year because a year would have been like around the start of 2015. And then I quit uni as well. I know my parents were just having an absolute like meltdown because I've like quit uni, quit my job, but like we were making a bit of money from
but not
YouTube,
enough.
not enough. But it was kind of like replace it. It's like, oh, I don't need this full-time job now. Not full-time, sorry. It was a part-time sort of like night shift kind of thing. Yeah. I didn't have to do that. I could have enough money to do my like day-to-day living at home kind of thing.
I think I've gotten unbelievably lucky in that I haven't put much effort into anything, but somehow things the stars have aligned for me, because I mean, like, my first job was, other than just doing kind of laboring, was I worked at McDonald's for a few years in the cafe section, and then after that I was just doing boring crappy admin at an accounting firm. But the problem was, like, my family are all high achievers and they're all really mathematical minded, but I just, like, I can't work a 9-to-5 office job, go in, you know, first thing in the morning in your nice suit and all of that. I just didn't want to do that my whole life. So, like, you know, when I was doing that, I was just really interested in writing and whatnot. And I've said it before on the podcast, but by pure fluke at uni, I never met you guys, because obviously I came from England, went to a different school, in a compulsory class, just got sat next to Scott by pure fluke. And it's like, man, if that didn't happen, I don't know what I'd be doing, because I'm just not driven enough.
I know what happened
to do it.
Even after that, after I'd left, we'd like, you know, loosely kept in contact, but I hadn't like spoken to you in a while. When I think I contacted you about doing like writing and stuff for FudgeMuppet, so that must have felt pretty out of the blue.
I'd actually just been fired like a week before.
Really?
Because
that's right, yeah.
Because I was only doing admin. I want to skip my lunch breaks, because I don't care to eat lunch. I'll just eat when I get home, and I'll leave slightly early and beat the work rush. And my boss obviously didn't like it, and he was like getting angry at me, and I don't like being yelled at, so I just shit back at him, and he's like, all right, you're done, chief. And I'm like, all right, see ya. So I went home and just like tried to keep working on writing my own stuff, and then about a week later was when you sent me a text. So
you were just manifesting that writing energy.
Yeah, so it's lucky I did that. I was always daydreaming about world building and stuff, because Scott, you knew, like, we've both talked about it before, that we like to world build and we like fantasy and stuff like that, and that's the reason you contact me about it. So yeah, things lined up.
I don't know what I'd be doing though.
Oh,
like,
yeah, that was part of the question, wasn't it?
Yeah, probably some sort of, it's a bit of a cop-out, but a similar thing, like trying to start some kind of like online business revolving around something that I'm passionate about. Scott, you'd be a history teacher at a high school or a uni.
Dude, I don't know.
You'd be telling them all about the Bronze Age.
No, I don't.
I don't think you would ever pursue that. But in a weird way, I think you'd be really good at it. It's like the history teacher that they need but won't get.
Yeah, you're good at getting people's attention and keeping it. So I think you'd actually be a good teacher. But obviously, you never know with kids. But yeah, I'd be working a dead-end job trying to sell a book, probably, and failing miserably, and then just working a dead-end job is probably how it would go.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Good. We got the other path. Hey. Okay. Let's have a look. Mind Traitor, you guys are friends, or at least on good terms with many fellow TesTubers. Not asking you to pick favorites, but who do you like doing collabs with the most? I feel like, so if
that's very easy to answer, because we're not that. Yeah, we're closest, as in we actually hang out with and we can spend time with Camel. Other Elder Scrolls YouTubers is more like a. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. But it seems like a more online basis.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Well, they're all international.
Yeah,
with the exception of Camel.
I can't think of any that are in
I think
regular contact.
I forgot what exact. Well, I think we were around something like 20 or 30,000 subs when we first met with Camel for the first time ever, because we were like, oh, he's nearby, so we were both small channels at the same time.
Yeah, I thought that he had like less at the time.
He did.
I think he had like 8,000 and we had like 20 or 30,000, and then soon he was doing all these Easter egg videos that were just going nuts viral, and he ended up getting much more subscribers than us, and then we were like kind of like oscillating around.
And we ended up kind of, a lot of this was before me, but collaborating on builds. So Camel would be making
a weapon
guide videos to find certain weapons, and we would be implementing those weapons into our builds. And it was a good way for us to kind of grow together.
But yeah, so ultimately to that question, it's Camel. Like we know him personally. We hang out with him. Yeah. So it's like we don't. A lot of other Elder Scrolls YouTubers are across the big blue. So. if Drew, Triton, if Drew didn't join the team, how different/difficult do you think handling the FudgeMuppet channel would be?
Oh, it'd be a lot slower.
It'd be a lot slower. It'd be different. To be honest, actually, I think too.
To be honest, it'd be
be 2 mil subs.
No, I actually think because we like you sort of like get influences from everything. Because when we were doing like lore, when we started lore, it was like a real sort of like facts oriented kind of thing, like 5 facts this or whatever, and we didn't go as deeply and so on. But I know Drew started doing like we were doing the Daedric. I think it was the first Daedric series and stuff, but you were going with more like having a bit more sort of like of your own input on it or your own perception of some of the Daedric princes. And I think that's had a big influence backwards on us. And now it's kind of the very norm of FudgeMuppet that we really like lean into the interpretation and like try and like, you know, think about it beyond just like going like, oh, here's what is in the game and is said for certain and so on. Instead, trying to contextualize it and weave it into some kind of theory or take about a prince or something like that. But I think a lot of that might have started with Drew's writing style. It started sort of influencing ours. So there's like one example.
Same as backstories for builds. I remember I would... And you can do both still, and people don't mind. But we would kind of do it like a extensive bio, like a wiki, and less like a story with prose. And then it kind of became like a blend, which I think is nicer anyway. So there's that as well.
But there's some. So yeah,
there'd be less content. That's for sure. There'd be one less person here. So
yeah. But yeah, that is what it would be like. Here's one. Let's give it some there's 2 Elder Scrolls questions here, and one is Con. If there is any lore you hate/disagree with/feel like it could be made more palatable, how would you rewrite it? So basically, is there any lore that you hate and disagree with? Mine's a cop-out answer, the same, but I think a lot of the Alliance stuff around Elder Scrolls Online, particularly Ebonheart Pact, I feel like could even... Maybe you could even make it work in some way. Maybe, I don't know. I just feel like I would rather. I don't like a lot of the lore of the initial ESO stuff, the main story and the alliances and stuff. A lot of it I'm not a big fan of, but a lot of expansions since then are pretty solid. Like it's changed, but yeah, I think they went in not a good way. How would you rewrite it? It's too complex. Like you've kind of got to like. Yeah, there's a lot of things to fix.
Yeah, I think for me it would just be kind of representations of different things. Like, I mean, this is more like a religious thing, but I don't really like how the Nords of Skyrim are less traditional and, more imperialized and don't have all their cool, like, unique old gods, and they've kind of just taken on, what the Empire, promotes.
Yeah, I guess
it's just not as nice, because obviously when you go to a new province, you want to be like, what's super unique about this province that I've never experienced before? And you get there and all their gods, except for they kind of like have all these quotes and they exclaim, oh, by Shore, but then they're not really following Shore. And it's the same gods that were in Oblivion, like very much.
I agree. I was going to say I agree, and I think that Bethesda in general, at least with Skyrim, they were afraid of sort of like really leaning into it. And I think generally the best stuff comes out of it when you lean into the theme, like really lean into the Viking stuff, the old Nords, that. And with the Red Guards, I really hope they lean into the stuff that makes Red Guards, because they arguably they did it for Morrowind.
They have such a good setup for it too. For diversity's sake, they have the crowns and the forebears, so they should have a full pantheon of traditional, more Yakuten style gods, as well as a more cosmopolitan, like more imperial type group of gods.
The worst feeling is when you look at a game's concept art and you're like, why wasn't it that? Like, that is so much cooler. You can see, sometimes arguably it's because of limitations of the game sort of stuff, but sometimes it's completely just sort of an aesthetic direction that you feel like they went for. Like I see it all the time with the Reachman, that they really played up, like it's very like skulls and cavemen looking, because they needed a nasty enemy rather than making them sort of a bit more of a complex sort of culture, or a culture that looks like it, it could be.
Yeah, I think to add to all of that, and like with how Skyrim was portrayed, is that you can't really be too harsh on the designers and the lore writers, because some of it is just practicality, but you do see a lot that descriptions end up being completely unlike what you actually see in the game. Like, obviously I've said it before, but Somerset is a good example in ESO. And then so it becomes a much less interesting place than the descriptions, and then you have characters in game which is kind of just the lore masters talking to the audience that says, oh, these were just, you know, hyperbolic statements, they were speaking metaphorically, and it's like, well, this is a fantasy world. Don't just, like, if somebody says it looks this way, make it kind of look, I don't know. Yeah, it would be nice. It would be nice if every culture had extremely unique visuals the way Morrowind does, but they've strayed from that path more and more with each game.
Yeah, I'm generally a fan of embracing the weirdness of things, and I feel like they should, just something different, fresh. And to be honest,
I do think that Skyrim cities were pretty, like, not in scale, but in terms of uniqueness, they were decent.
Yeah,
they weren't terrible.
I think it's, when I was saying too, the other thing too is that Bethesda is big enough. I feel like they can embrace the weirdness, because no one's not going to buy Elder Scrolls 6 because it's too weird. Like, they're just going to buy it, period. So actually, why don't you lean into it and make it? Do you know what I mean? But in the same vein, they can just go like, oh, well, we could make it kind of generic fantasy land. It'll still sell.
And people will still buy it, yeah.
Like, why, you know? Okay. Like, I'm trying to, like, because there's some that are a lot of, like, overlap in some of these. So I apologize if we haven't, like, we didn't, like, shout you out specifically, but there's a few things that have kind of been doubled over on.
There is a lot of, if you lived in the Elder Scrolls universe, what race would you be? Where would you live? This kind of stuff.
We can answer. I think we did that in the 1 year podcast anniversary thing. I think it's not as fun as you'd like to believe. I think we said things like, I'd like to be some, like, I think it was like an imperial merchant or something, chilling out in the imperial city doing art or something, or writing books. Like, it wasn't nothing, you know, intense. I'll go back to the YouTube. Here's one. Sorry, did you want to?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, like, would it change the question if you put yourself in a specific time, maybe prior to the third and fourth eras? Like, if you could be a part of an ancient culture in the Elder Scrolls, who would you pick? Like, I mean, my answer to that was going to be like, oh, I'd want to be either a Dureni or an Ayleid at the height of their empires or something like that. Which could be interesting, you know, because then you've obviously got the elven life. Like, you wouldn't want to be an imperial no matter what, because your lifespan is
you'd want to be an Ayleid at the height of their power, eh?
I was thinking about it.
You got some malevolent inclinations you want to tell us about.
Well, at the beginning, like, when the Dureni and the Ayleids are, like, discovering new forms of magic by, like, you know, having the starlight fall into their wells, or by plunging into oblivion for the first time for the Dureni. It could be really interesting to be a part of those cultures, if you're not just going to pick the obvious, oh, I'll be a long-living high elf in the fourth era, etc., etc. But
one thing that kind of changes the answer a little bit, you've got to consider too, with the sort of like mortality and stuff, or how long you live, and obviously you live mortal for 1,000 years or whatnot, is that there, besides, like, there's obviously things like vampires or just being good at magic, which can help get around it, but the other thing is also, like, afterlife's real. Like, you do have an existence in, like, afterlife, so it's a little bit different, rather when, like, we don't know in real life, so your natural inclinations to be like, well, I don't know, I'm not going to gamble on that, so, you know, want to extend what you know as long as possible. Whereas if you're like 100%, I've visited Sovngarde, like, I know I'm going there, like, or do you know what I mean? Like,
but it's pretty boring. I know they can only do so much with games, but, like, forget it's the afterlife, and Sovngarde, suddenly it's not that interesting. It's a big misty expanse with this hall that, okay, you can have noise. Yeah, I know. You'd get sick of it. But there's other... Like, I would want to prolong my life in Tamriel for diversity's sake, in terms of
do you assume that there's much more to Sovngarde than where you visit in Skyrim?
Probably, but it's just, I don't know. Look,
there's
a lot of them
other
like...
options, like, but there's other afterlives, but you know what I'm trying to get at is just broadly, like, there's more options than just, like, fighting. I think
I still think I'd pick the one with the highest mortal lifespan, just to experience that for as long as possible, considering that it will probably be the minority of my perception of time if I'm going to spend all this time in an afterlife waiting for the next Kalpa or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, like, who knows?
Here's a question from Kukos. As a huge fan of the Dark Souls games, I would love to see your perspectives and wisdom on that series' esoteric lore. My question, though, if you were to try your style on a different game or series, what would you do? I mean, like, theoretically, like, to be honest, like, a lot of it's so covered. People really do get in on Dark Souls lore. It's the VIDS does a great job.
But yeah, he's so good at it as
it's
well.
so it would be like starting from scratch on something else. But I do like, I guess what you're getting at too is like the esoteric lore, but meaning that there's heaps of interpretation. Like everything, you only get little fragments of bits. There's hardly any sort of like, you know, definitive like, but this is exactly what happens. It's all piecing together puzzles. And generally, it's my favorite part about Elder Scrolls lore. And as much as there is a lot of like, you know, written sources and so on, there is a lot of piecing stuff together as well to be had. And especially because it's so, I like anything that solely relies on the unreliable narrator. I think just, you know, to differing degrees, like obviously there's experiences that you have that you can see things to know to be true, but then I like the flexibility.
It's essential for making the content we make fun, you know, because we've talked about it before, that there is always a discussion between people who really don't like when anyone talks out of canon. And I think we do a good job of, whenever we speculate, we always say we're speculating. So take it with a grain of salt, but feel free to just enjoy the ride. But yeah, the most fun you're going to have with Elder Scrolls lore is when you don't have specific dates of this thing and that thing happening and this is the outcome. And it's like, no, well, how do you interpret that?
And the other thing too is like seeing different perspectives. Like almost sometimes, like when I'm writing, like I try and like, if we're doing a script on like an elven perspective or something like that, like I kind of try and give like the elven take of events and present that, but it's the elven perspective or the Nord perspective and how they can all differ, or different sort of like kind of getting into the heads of the people. Like basically, rather than going like, you know, you have your own biases, your own interpretations, and this is what's true. You've got to be able to be flexible and move your mind into, I've got to be, you know, this Thalmor elf to be able to say like what they think is true and like present it in a way as if I was trying to present it, you know, truth, you know, their version of events or whatever.
Well, and I mean, returning to the initial question about branching out into different lore, I think, like, obviously, yeah, as we've just said, the Dark Souls games, the Soulsborne, Kiro games are all, there's amazing lore on YouTube for it already. But since, you know, like I mentioned before, I'm in love with A Song of Ice and Fire's lore, and Elden Ring coming out, which is kind of like, it's all of FromSoft's kind of crazy ideas combined with kind of maybe some of George Martin leveling it out and adding kind of like, you know, houses and politics and lineages and all of that stuff, to the point where there could be really good potential to give our own perspective on that lore. And, you know, who cares if there's another channel doing it? There's just more content.
To tie it in, actually, to a question we had before, all the stuff talking about like getting started on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. If we were to approach something like Elden Ring, for example, we wouldn't approach it the same as we would like something that's already within our like ball game, like Elder Scrolls. Like if an Elder Scrolls 6 came out, it would be a bit more. We'd think like a little bit more like what we can bring to it, or like niche kind of thing, like our interpretation sort of style kind of lore and constructing a tale from pieces and so on, like in our sort of kind of way, as opposed to just trying to do what someone else is doing, which they're clearly already doing better. You know what I mean? Or because you can always like get around that by, it's like you can either do it better than someone else, or you can do it differently to someone else in another kind of way. But like if you kind of, you'll always live in someone's shadow if you're only doing it as like 70% as good as someone who's just better than or something, you know. But yeah, let's get another question. Non-dual 13, real random question, but how do you think a situation like COVID would impact the Elder Scrolls universe? How would you expect each of the states and races to react to such an event? Well, there is an actual example of it with a Thracian plague, which like wipes out half of Tamriel's population, and they did actually band together and form the All Flags Navy and go to Thrass and sink it and fight back. But the thing there is, there was an actual like perpetrator behind it. Like there's a slowed, like it's maybe it's what be like a biological weapon behind the Thracian plague. So they had like an enemy to fight. Whereas it's like a situation like the world went through recently.
The Nahartan flu was like a thing that happened, and it kind of just kills. Yeah, it just kills a bunch of people, and
it's a little bit different too, because I guess you kind of can't have a situation like our world went through because we don't have the same level of mass transport and trade and stuff like that.
There's no QR codes in the Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, so
I don't think the question really
it's harder to contact trace, but at the same time it's way easier to quarantine because you can control people's foot travel and stuff, and you haven't got like cars and planes and buses like moving stuff around. But I don't know, it's kind of hard to say, I guess.
I wonder how well restoration can deal with these kind of plagues, because it obviously
just pray at an altar.
Much.
Any altar, cure disease, done.
Yeah,
they already invented the
would
cure disease potion. Just drink that.
Yeah.
Too easy.
Done. Are you guys excited, Matthew Mitchell, are you guys excited for the release of the Elder Kings 2 mod for Crusader Kings 3, set during the Second Interregnum? I am, because I actually haven't got into Crusader Kings 3 at all. I was really into Crusader Kings 2, but I never actually really played it normally. I just played it with the mod. I just got straight into Elder Kings. I'm just playing that. So the same thing, it's the mod for Crusader Kings 3. I'm basically going to get into it when the mod's finished, and I'll just go into it there.
I love the idea of it. Like I do with most RTS games, I love the idea of them, but I feel like either I'm not smart enough or I don't have a good enough attention span. I just can't get good at them.
See,
I just can't function with RTS games. Total War is about the only one I've been able to conquer, and even then I struggle with some of the battles.
My first big gaming things, I mean, there was like Pokemon, but the other things were Warcraft 3 on PC, so real-time strategy I was like super into, and The Sims 2, bro. So I've always been into, like, I actually always liked those
kinds
of... What
about Age of Empires?
Yeah, Age of Empires too, but I did prefer Warcraft over it because there was like cooler stuff. There's orcs and stuff like that. But I do like those kinds of like strategy management-y type things somewhat. And I can get a little like...
Didn't you name one of your Skyrim orc characters after a Warcraft character?
Yeah,
I
Thrall.
thought that was pretty... Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit cringe.
Yeah, before... yeah, that was a while back. Before we really got into the role-playing, like deeper lore, yeah, like because it's like we've always been into Elder Scrolls and like since Oblivion and stuff, like as a kid, but never been. You can get into the games without being deep into the lore and stuff, and that happened after Skyrim for us.
I can still remember loading up Oblivion because, funnily enough, the first time I played Oblivion in 2006 was on PC. That was a Windows XP.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually checked because I looked up when Windows Vista came out and it was 2007, which means I must have been playing on an XP.
Yeah.
I can remember the little like loading thing going through all the different pictures as it like loads more progress, like a skeleton in the sewers and
by the
things
way,
like this.
Here's just a fun anecdote for you guys. Is like about getting into the lore. I remember first hearing about some of the more whack Vivek stuff and the sort of godhead concepts and so on, and I hated it when I first heard it. I really didn't like it. It really bothered me. I'm like, oh, what if it's all a dream? There's all this and so on. And now I love it. Now it's the best stuff as I've got deeper and deeper and deeper. But it's like any people who are having that kind of like rejection to some of the deeper lore and so on, I'm pretty confident if you stay there and you really still get into Elder Scrolls lore deeper and deeper and deeper, you'll actually really appreciate it. It's like an acquired taste somewhat. Like, do you know what I mean? Like some of it's a bit, yeah, it takes a while, but yeah, with some of it. Okay. I'll answer this question because the guy who did it has put a little bit of a word soup together for it. So every Sith is for free on Twitter. Sorry if this is a bit esoteric, but what sort of unique ecosystems defined by their primary producers might be interesting to explore in TES? Example, floating log rafts, volcanic vent chemosynthetic worms, etc. Might there be magi synthetic life in space? So if we boil this down, I think he was asking what kind of unique and interesting environments could there be to explore in Elder Scrolls.
What was the word to describe something in space? Say it again.
Magi synthetic life in space.
And then the one before that was like
chemosynthetic worms.
Right. Okay. So
volcanic vent chemosynthetic worms.
Okay. So here's my take on answering this very abstract question.
It's not necessarily esoteric either. Like it's not some.
Just very. I feel like it's very like science textbook type stuff.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the worms in the volcanoes, it would be like a worm that derives its sustenance from
like chemicals in the vents or something.
Things that aren't organic matter, and then somehow turns that into organic matter to like sustain themselves, like as opposed to plants having photosynthesis or other animals just eating other animals. And then I think the space worm thing relating to Elder Scrolls is like the idea of space being this like not space as we know it, but a magical area.
Well, it could be like if you could imagine some
and
sort of
subsisting off the magic.
Yeah,
like ethereal worms who feed off.
Well, I was thinking too, like with the stars and the sun like being close to it in the sky. I mean, like it could be. You could
be.
In space is a hard place to obviously explore in the Elder Scrolls, but volcanic vent chemos. I mean, there's cool stuff. I don't know, like
imagine you're playing Morrowind and some worm comes out of a volcano, and in the lore it sustains itself by eating stuff in the volcano. I don't know. I feel like it was a very complex way to ask.
I'd like to see some interesting.
I agree with everything you guys said.
I'd like to see some interesting stuff if they do for Hammerfell, like the deserty sort of savannah style. It would be cool if they went for something unique, like I don't know, like
unique like sand.
No, like a giant salmon, but something interesting because like deserts can there's so much sand and winds can blow it and flow. Like I would even like, for example, this isn't necessarily unique in the way he means it, but it would be cool if they added in some like time sensitive thing. So for example, even if it's one thing I actually kind of like in Pokemon and stuff sometimes when you can only catch Pokemon certain days and stuff like that. If they actually had some like an internal game clock, like waiting, but like even say sort of the sands shifted and then certain ruins became available at different times and so on and like popped up with different entrances, it would just be a really cool thing of like discovering cool stuff in the shifting sands of the Alakir. Like it could be cool, but I don't know, it's kind of...
I don't really like sand.
Is there a reason?
It's really coarse and rough. It gets everywhere as well.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I have that quote in a script that I'm working on. I won't tell you what it is though, but it's there. I promise.
Matthew Leon, can you do more videos about specific quests narrating the story, especially in Oblivion / Morrowind that many of us have never played? We can. Definitely can. One thing I think...
They were fun videos.
One thing I was thinking of is... some of this new Creation Club stuff that's coming with the Anniversary Edition looks pretty interesting. Like the Ghosts of Tribunal obviously got me there, but even the Cause of the Mythic Dawn one, and it has like an Ayla Ruin and stuff like that. I feel like we could sort of cover those quests and so on, and then kind of do a bit of like a lore assessment or something, and a review kind of thing. Like I think that would be
like, is this canon in our heads?
Yeah, it's gonna be so interesting if the future games
you can't make some of it canon.
Yeah, some of it.
Well, you can, but it'll just be that thing where it's like crazy contradictions in the lore where it's like, this shouldn't exist in Skyrim.
Yeah.
It cannot exist in Skyrim according to previous lore. Like things like the amber armor and stuff where it's meant to be made by some, super unique amber from the Shivering Isles by a specific root system that pushes through the ground and creates... Anyway, all of that stuff to make their amber. You can't just get amber from Skyrim and make the exact same armor with the same qualities. I mean, you shouldn't be able to. They might just go, it was all a mistake. And you can make it from any armor, amber, with the addition of this one specific flower, and then it becomes a thing. I don't know. I'd prefer they don't. But we'll see.
I tend to agree. What was this? There's another one, Sam FB. Will you cover Starfield lore if it is well fleshed out? And are there any plans to do playthroughs of future games? Would be interesting to see different paths each of you take at the start of a new game. With Starfield, we'll definitely cover the lore, like you said, if it's well fleshed out. Like that is a plan. Like we'd love to tackle a new universe and bring it in. But
Our goal with Starfield is very much like, take it as it comes. We would love for it to be like a thing as significant and big as Fallout 4 was for our channel, while maintaining Elder Scrolls content, of course. It's just, would I be willing to bet that that's it's going to be good enough where that's the case? Probably not, but I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm really surprised and it is as good as Bethesda's making it out to be, and I really like it. But
well, that's the thing. At the beginning, it's going to mostly be builds and guides.
Yeah, probably.
And the lore is going to decide how much life it has for content, because obviously we want lots of lore to be able to make more builds that aren't just stat builds.
it's also
if it's good, then it can be a big part of the channel.
The other thing
forward.
too is like some things can be good games, but not necessarily have like sticky or like lore or like that's really appealing or something. Like for example, like dude, honestly, look at Cyberpunk 2077. Like I mean, largely like that like fell off for a lot of other reasons, but like builds and stuff might even go well in part, not now, but around release and so on, but like lore wasn't a big thing, or even Outer Worlds, like actual lore in Outer Worlds just did not go as well, or people aren't as interested. And it is because it's a lot of it, it's just Elder Scrolls is a unique example, and a lot of these fictional universes that people really love are so deep, contributed to over decades worth of time. Like it's just a different ballgame. Like not everything has lore worth covering to the extent, you know what I mean?
Some games as well are not YouTube friendly as far as editing and stuff goes. Like it's a part that a lot of people would never consider as a viewer, but like console commands thankfully make our job like much easier, and they make our videos look way cooler because we can have all these flying cameras and cinematic stuff going on. Like Elder Scrolls Online is a good example of, it's hard to create content for, because it's an online game. You can't have your own save. You can't mod it. You get what I'm saying here. You can't even free cam or get a tool from the developers to let you use the free cam. You've got players running around in all your shots. Like it's,
yeah.
And when you do a quest once, you can't load back and do it again. And it's done.
Yeah.
The quest's done.
Exactly. You have to make an entirely new character, grind through it again. And then when you do get there, you can turn off the HUD and go into kind of screenshot mode, but you're still kind of just crouching along the environment. So you can never get footage off the ground and things like that.
We do a good
There's
job.
A lot of obstacles.
We do a good job with what there is. Drew's kind of mastered Elder Scrolls Online footage as best as it can be mastered.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a struggle.
This is somewhat related to other things we've done, but I just do like it's a little bit more expansive too. It's from Appetizer Gyro on Twitter. Said, favorite fictional universes and stories outside of the Elder Scrolls. Could be other video games, but books, movies, TV shows, comics. That just broadens the scope a little bit, because we were kind of just talking about games before. But what do you guys think? Any favorite?
Don't know.
Book
I feel
stories?
like I kind of covered it. A lot of them have games.
I know. I'm a big fan of, in terms of like film, but Mad Max. I was really, like, as a kid, that's what really got me into. Like, I was so excited about Fallout because of Mad Max. And I liked Fury Road and stuff as well. Mad Max is a big something. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I like a lot, but never to the same level of depth as Elder Scrolls or Song of Ice and Fire. Like, the amount of fantasy book series that have really great lore, but obviously it's only as deep as these books. You've got, like, your Stormlight Archives from Brandon Sanderson, like Name of the Wind, Pat Rothfuss, and universes like that are great. And I mean, I absolutely adore Cowboy Bebop, which has kind of a cool aesthetic and universe, but you can never really ever dive as deep into these things as the Elder Scrolls. I'd say Lord of the Rings is the one that comes closest if you really want to get into it. But even then, I've only barely touched the surface of Lord of the Rings lore.
I've just kind of deepened my weebness over the last year or two, because before, it's like I like things like more surface level, like Full Metal Alchemist and like Naruto kind of stuff. But it really got into Attack on Titan. Really, really like that. Vinland Saga and Berserk as well. I'm like pretty deep into that now. Like actually reading it. I'd only watched the anime a long time ago, but Also, another thing, I don't know if people like weird stuff, but it's kind of it's a bit more. It's not like the same Morrowind weird. It's a little bit more like whimsical, like Borderlandsy feeling, maybe in terms of just the. It's like a big space opera. It's a graphic novel called Saga, and well, not novel. It's like an ongoing series. I'm really excited because it's been on a hiatus for like 3-ish years, and now it's actually coming back the start of next year, which is really, really cool as well. But Saga by Fiona Staples and Brian K. Vaughan. What about you, Drew? You're a big reader. Favorite book? What about the...
Wait, favorite book
or books? A book universe.
He just said his
well, yeah,
there's Song of
there's a few. I mean,
he said the Brandon Sanderson book and books and.
Dude, I could go through a million. It would be endless. But yeah.
All right, fair.
And I'm just not a consumer.
I mean, to be fair, I read a lot more historical stuff now than I used to be. I used to be like 70% fantasy, 30% history. Now it's like the reverse.
Yeah. I've had like kind of a renaissance myself because I used to be like reading like all outside like Elder Scrolls lore stuff. Like it was all like big historical kind of stuff, like lots of real stuff. But yeah, I've absolutely gone on binges of different books and other reading different things. I don't actually...
Anime lit a fire in his soul.
Yeah, but even actualized books, like I read like another another weird kind of thing that I really, really liked was Born by Jeff Vandermeer. It's like a... if you kind of like... It's a post-apocalyptic kind of thing, but weird. Like the premise, like there's a flying bear called Maud, like that flies over this city where the company destroyed this post-apocalyptic stuff with like toxic rivers and stuff and these like... feral children with like wasp sort of mutagen stuff in their eyes. It's a cool, weird story, but like I really like that.
Actually, to add a final book series onto it, I think I haven't even read all of them yet. There's so many of them, but Terry Pratchett's Discworld is wonderful as well. Like it doesn't take itself too seriously, so it allows itself to be really wacky. And it's hilarious as well. So that Discworld is great to get into if you care for that as well. And they're very easy, short reads too.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Terry.
We should get an Audible sponsorship.
Yeah.
Promoting all these books.
Well, there was actually a question. Just add water to your ramen. Says, how do you guys keep a balance between entertaining and informative? And also, when are you guys making another Elder Scrolls story like the Fall of the Snow Prince? I've got one that I would like to write soon, but we kind of, because they're small, like they're smaller things or in between projects kind of, but maybe we could do something more ambitious too, like a Fallout Redemption before at some point.
So you go.
I was just gonna say I'd really like to write a prose version of Rajin's life, just because there's so many individual stories you could attack for his life.
That's actually a really cool idea.
Yeah, and the sex scene between Mephala and Rajin,
I'll be happy to write it. I would be happy to write it.
We'll get some nice concept art done for it as well.
Hey, that ties into this question, which I don't know what the answer really is to it, but the Ashlander says, would you guys be willing to have fan art submissions and showcase them on the channel, picking up digital concept artistry as a hobby, and would love to cover Elder Scrolls themes? It just depends on, I don't know, I mean, what do you like, fan art of?
Well, I mean, if
Elder
it's just
Scrolls or
if it's just it could be a cool thing to have, because I'll normally put at the end of videos, if there's like 10-20 seconds of music and a fading out of a visual shot, just showing some people's cool artwork was always
it's kind of a thing. It's just like if you had some cool artwork and you're like, if you asked, you'd have to like, it's like case by case basis, you know what I mean? You'd have to be like, hey, look, this is a would you be willing to show?
Set any precedent?
Yeah.
So that
or tag us in it on Twitter or something.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's a good option.
Yeah. Here, so this is something we can talk about. Sam W., do you consider Kirkbride's writing to be canon, his own mythos, continuity, or fan fiction? Love you, bros. Thank you. No, we don't consider it canon, but this is what I want to quickly talk about is like, canon isn't the only important thing. That's the thing, because you're listening with the word, like strictly the way we understand canon is any of the stuff in the games and so on, or like official Bethesda content, stuff that's written and like, you know, any of the books in there and stuff like that. But all of those books and everything in there is, you know, subject to the unreliable narrator. But every single, like a lot of, you know, our videos and stuff too, we've like, you know, and given our theories and interpretation and so on. Like, for example, if you have cool theories about stuff, you're outside of canon because none of them are explicitly true until confirmed. So what you should, instead of, I think there's a lot of like canon wars stuff where people start fighting about what's canon and what's canon, like, and this is and this isn't and all that kind of stuff. Instead, it's a lot better to take, well, like, look, this official Bethesda stuff is the canon, but all of your theory crafting, all of your interpretations, and even like bonus stories and stuff outside of that doesn't mean they're not valuable because they're not canon. You know what I mean? And especially when they are by like prior developers and stuff such as Michael Kirkbride, who has had part of his work canonized in the games, and then some of it's hanging outside of it. But there's so many of it that's really good. Some of it I'm not as fond of. But then, you know, it's kind of like you can kind of just take things as your own headcanon and work with it. There's more fun to the Elder Scrolls universe than what lies within the canon.
Yeah, I think the key is to recognize canon, but not get hung up on it completely. Yeah. You know, like,
because it will suck the joy out of it. Honestly, like a lot of, because there's a lot of the coolest stuff in the Elder Scrolls is the interpretation. It is the theories. Like, if it was just strictly canon, it's.
I suppose the difference some people have, and where it goes from black and white to shades of grey, is that people will have a theory that seems very plausible. Like but it's not confirmed, but it seems very plausible, versus some Kirkbride continuation of writing where it talks about, you know, flying, I don't know, moths or in space or some, you know what I mean? Like something more abstract like that.
The way I sort of treat it is I just take like the ideas, like I obviously will only present like canon stuff and what's clear, like our interpretations, our theories on top of it. And there's a difference kind of somewhat. It's obviously all shades of grey, where your interpretation on canon versus interpretation on interpretation on interpretation of canon. You know what I mean? Like going down the chain, because some people construct the strength of some theories that we've found before. We've tried to like source or like kind of work with some theories that are there that are reliant on so many like steps, do you know what I mean, that are all, you know, first it's got to be interpreted like this, which then only then can the next interpretation work, or the next step of your theory. Whereas if you're trying to, you know, use a convincing theory, it should be kind of trying to like string a bunch of different canon things that are here into sort of one central idea. But whereas if you kind of, do you know what I'm getting at? Like, instead of making this giant long chain of assumptions.
And on top of that, you know, just since we have the unreliable narrator, you can't actually take every word you hear in the canon as gospel as well. If one character says one passing line about something that they have no right knowing anything about, it doesn't mean that anything you say on the topic from then on out is just dead. You can't talk about it because that one Oblivion NPC said blah, 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 or whatever. It's like,
it's only canon that they said that.
Yeah,
exactly.
But not
That's
that what
exactly
they said
right.
is true. It's canon that this is written in a book, but not that what's written is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the further you stray from like the Dawn era, the more concrete things become. But there's always doubt. There's always different perspectives, and also, you know, a different race is going to see something that happened in the Dawn and the Malefic times completely differently to someone else. And
because
there's not only one right answer.
Yeah, and especially sometimes it's really helpful. Like in the recent, actually, I think the Bosma Gods is. Oh, it should actually be up by now. But the Nord's Gods Explained is next one they've written, and there is canon sources for all of like the idea that they understand everything is cyclical, and the universe is cyclical, so they kind of buy into the Kalpa idea, whether they use that word or not, but a cyclical sort of nature of things, and rather than one singular sort of creation story. But because of that, there's not as much elaboration on it. But I did use, and I bring it up and obviously state it's a Michael Kirkbride thing, but there's this a piece that he wrote on the Nord's lack of a creation story, which really helps contextualize it. So it's like, yes, technically that's outside of the canon, but that is outside stuff that supports things that are there. Because sometimes, for example, the canon things are like, Paarthurnax said Kalpa, and the next world will have to take care of itself. That's kind of like sometimes like that's all you've got, whereas you need more elaboration or contextualization to really like build a better understanding, or same as things like Kim or stuff like that. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. I'm trying to pick through some of the questions that how do you all know? So from Colton Rourke, how do you all not get burnt out exploring that much lore and playing the same games for so long? Do you ever feel uninterested in the Elder Scrolls and need to take some time off to enjoy other things? Does someone else want to take that away first?
Well, like for me, my relationship with the Elder Scrolls has changed over time to the point where I still play the games a lot, especially when I'm making a video, but my love for the Elder Scrolls has almost not, I don't know if transcend is the right word, but it's transcended being a game that I play, and it's more of just a mythology and a universe that I love to think about, to read about, to theorize about, as opposed to go in and play it myself. So I don't really play it much unless I'm filming.
100% same page. Sometimes I think of a really like, even like I'm really inspired by a piece of lore, and I'll think like, oh, like maybe it'd be cool to do a playthrough like this and like lore part, and then I'm like, oh, but then I actually have to play it, and it's like
I do a playthrough of Oblivion every year.
Sometimes hitting those old ones. I'm almost like with the anniversary edition, I would be keen to do
I'll do another Skyrim playthrough for sure.
But overall, I think I could speak for all of us. We've played the game so many times that it's kind of hard. Even playing things in different ways, all of our playthroughs, over the hundreds of them, kind of crisscross, and you've kind of experienced everything before, or it
probably
might be the slightest change.
Probably.
So it's kind of like, yeah, like, but exactly like you were saying, Drew, it's kind of transcended to the point where I actually just enjoy the universe. Like I could read.
It's a game and it's a world.
Yeah, kind of. Like I visually want to see it. It's like half of. I really love the Project Tamriel and Tamriel Rebuilt projects for Morrowind, which is big. Like they expand the mainland of Morrowind or add other areas like Cyrodiil and stuff, and they sort of go with a different. It's basically as if it was the word Tamriel as it was described, or as you could, expanded upon from Morrowind's era, like Morrowind time. So, it's all like jungle, you got your jungle sort of Cyrodiil, your giant imperial city with like, sprawling out into the lake and so on. But all of that kind of stuff, I love. When I get into it, I like do some of the quests and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this playthrough and so on. But then I end up just going like, oh, I need to like run across to here and just look at stuff and like soak it in. I love actually just exploring all of the like the physical environment and seeing the people and the clothes and stuff like that I end up like not playing it as much as I like just zooming around, like looking at everything, and then
you end up doing a toggle free cam playthrough.
Yeah, but even reading about, like, I love on there, if you should follow their the Twitter pages, but like I'll often like them on Twitter, but they'll just like, here's a picture of something and here's the lore dump, and I love how they've kind of gone like they give a little explanation as to why kind of the things the way they are, and I don't know, there's just a lot of thought into the world itself, and it's cool. It's cool. But yeah, I think that's the answer. It's kind of answer to your question is we kind of do, we do, pursue other interests in between. Like it's not like our entire life is non-stop looking into Elder Scrolls lore and reading.
Well, an interesting question that kind of ties into that from Azara Sarethi is basically like, what's a typical work day for you like? Does the person who narrate or a specific video also do the script and visuals for it, or do you split tasks for every singular video? Generally speaking, Drew's been doing the editing for a while. If there's a very specific video that I want edited a certain way, or it's just easier, then I'll do it. Same for Scott. But typically, how we work has changed a lot over the years. And for the last, I've got this calendar down on the floor where I'm actually doing a Jerry Seinfeld on how he got better at comedy by writing a joke every single day. But I basically have a set amount of words that I always exceed, but I have to hit every single day, 7 days a week, but it's not excessive. And the reason I implemented that was because I wanted to have more, it sounds weird, but more votes each day for my own kind of conscience of like, I write Elder Scrolls content. And it's just being reinforced every single day because what was happening before essentially was that I would do an insane amount of work in 3 days and then nothing for a while, and then an insane amount of work and then nothing, and it wasn't sustainable. So a typical work day, and it also involves, at least for me, I like to wake up as early as possible. If I can wake up at 5 a.m., that's amazing, because then I can just work until midday, and kind of then the rest of the day I can kind of wrap up some easier stuff. But definitely front load the day with the hard stuff.
The one guarantee with the content, at least for like the last 4 years or so, is that it's guaranteed that whoever wrote the video voices that video, basically. So you voice your own writing, because it's a lot easier. I think we all have slightly different styles, both for narration and for writing. So there's been times where we've voiced videos that the other person has written, and you just make infinitely more mistakes as well, because you're not used to the way you do it. So that's the one thing that's consistent is that we will voice our own writing.
Yeah, I know, especially I use commas. I don't really use them grammatically correct. I use them to be read by someone who is speaking. So for me, they're actually just pauses.
Yeah.
They're not meant to be like perfectly, grammatical.
I think people do get hung up a bit on grammar. Like, your grammar is important, but at the end of the day, something should be written so that it's spoken well.
For
like,
YouTube,
regardless of what. Well, I'd say even not for YouTube. It may have even been Tolkien in an interview who said it. But yeah, if you're writing a story, you want to be able to read it to people. You want people to read it to their children or something like that.
But there is a difference between what makes it pleasant. Tolkien's pleasant to me personally. Tolkien's pleasant to hear it read. I find reading. I was trying to read The Children of Hurin, right, and I really don't actually vibe his writing style. It's too much, because you know how when you read something, it's just different to when you're speaking it out loud, or hearing something. Like, I feel like you could I feel like people would have a different experience reading our scripts versus even our narrating or something. I think it just does come across differently, because you can go a lot of the really like heavy Tolkien sort of like really heavy lyrical kind of stuff. It's kind of like how they say like poetry is meant to be read out loud, like it's written in a way that's read out loud. Whereas when you just read poetry, you don't get the same feeling as because they say like, read poetry out loud to yourself, and it actually kind of like hits better and so on. I think there is a difference, I think.
Anyway.
But yeah, I guess typical day, it varies. I wouldn't say typical day.
There's never a typical day in the life.
I usually subscribe to the sort of get up early. Like, I like 5 a.m. kind of. I like wake up and the first thing to do is work, and just work. Like, the stream of consciousness straight up when you wake up and work into it. Though that has been faltering so much, because I've got two young kids, so like my sleep has been just thrown all around.
Pure chaos. Yeah. I mean, one thing I do, which may be helpful advice to some people, to others they may do it already or not at all, but I find that especially when you've got all these screens around, it's incredibly easy to have your brain be constantly going, constantly worrying. So every morning before I do anything else, I have to sit quietly and read a bit of a book, just because it's like there's something about reading a book versus every other medium of anything where you have to solely focus on that. Otherwise, you're not going to interpret anything, if you know what I mean. You're not going to be able to visualize it. You have to sit there and focus purely on that. So I find even if it's only 15 minutes, if I read a few pages or a chapter of a book every day, it's so much easier to then slip into a working attitude, or even just a focused one.
Don't go on TikTok, that's for sure. Don't go on your phone.
Yeah, phone. That's what I'd say. Like, I big believer in the sort of set your day right. Like, whatever you sort of do first is kind of like gonna set you up. Like, if you, Do what you want to? We've been going on for a few hours. But do you want to just do one little tiny fun on my Let's Roleplay? If you guys were to be the tribunal gods, which one would be who? You each get to have an opinion on this. Personally, I always thought Michael would be Sotha Sil, Drew Almalexia, and Scott would be Vivek.
Strong agree.
I was really hoping I'd get Sotha Sil, to be honest.
I'd agree, I think. I think I kind of agree with his assessment.
So okay, I guess I'm.
Well, but it was like
I'm
if
up
you were,
with-
well,
okay.
I feel like you could, like, you know, if you want to, like, so you don't have any dysphoria, like imagine a male version of Almalexia. Like you
Well,
don't
that wasn't the
have to
problem.
be.
Yeah, well, I actually don't care about that fact. I don't know.
But
I
wouldn't
just
Sophie
kind of-
still
but-
be someone who is quite mathematically minded?
But
which you said
what
before
what
that
if
she
you think
wouldn't
of
be?
them in terms of the anticipations? You'd be Boethia, I'd be Mephala, and Michael would be Azura.
I guess. Okay, well, let me think. I think we all agree that Scott would be Vivek. And the thing is, I think there are elements of you, Michael, that I would agree is very Sofa Sil, but at the same time, me. I don't think any of us really are like Almalexia in that she's very passionate and can be very angry, but is also kind of
I
like
don't know.
But
a
don't
caring
you-
person.
There's this other side to Drew when he gets mad.
I guess you don't want to throw that too, also, but it's like she's, I guess, really like the maternal, like the caring aspect and stuff. There's stuff there too. I don't know if that's necessarily.
So, well, okay. Well, one thing I
Drew
will
the
say.
healing
No,
mother.
but it's not just. It's also like, you know, she's also like the face of, or the because Vivek was in a capacity too, but like it's Almalexia is like the most popular of the Tribune.
Well, yeah, she's the most popular, the most charismatic, and she's probably more
Yeah,
talkative
so if the
as
shoe
well. I feel
fits.
like I
That's it.
fade into the background in any situations I'm in.
No,
But
okay,
also, I'd
remove
say
the talkative
Sofa Sil-
part though, and I think there you go.
I think the thing with Sofa Sil is that, like, in terms of like the kind of mathematical orderliness, I definitely think Michael like nails that aspect. You're much more orderly in your life than I am, but I'd also say you're less reclusive than I am,
I don't know. It depends what you define.
and I'd
as
say your
inclusive.
mind is more structured.
If it's any
than mine
consolation,
is.
if we didn't have to put it into to three, if you had to put it on the spectrum, I think I'd put it like you're both close. The reason I would say, like, I wouldn't say you are Almalexia. I just think it's like you are the like Michael would be more Sofa Sil than you on the whole.
know what
but
I
I think
think?
you're still more on the Sofa Sil
No,
side.
you know
of
what
the
I
spectrum.
think? I think you two are only basing this off the fact that it's clear that I'm the most feminine of the three of us.
Yeah.
That's what everybody's thinking.
Yeah.
So, no, I reject it entirely.
Okay.
The mother figure, the healing
The
mother,
holy mother.
the lady of mercy, the warden, the
Mm.
lover, the Kaima goddess of the tribunal.
I guess if we were doing the anticipations, then I would be more Boethia and Michael would be more Azura.
The
Yeah, I
gradual
agree.
loss of her powers caused her much grief and eventually resulted in paranoia and obsession with returning the old glory at all costs. We haven't seen that arc of you yet, so let's hope he's going to start sacrificing the lives of her fellow tribunes to regain her old
Actually, yeah, I'll
power.
kill. I'll kill. Oh, excuse my language. I'll kill you.
Excuse your French. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you have it.
That was a
Well,
divisive
well,
one.
I would
this
would
was for
say
me.
he or she called right for a good estimation. If you had to fulfill one of the slots, maybe we should do this. It would be fun to do it with like some of the other gods, like where you fit in, like when you have a bit more options and stuff. But
Anyway,
yeah. Well,
Well-
thank you all so much for 1 million subs, and I hope you enjoyed our little Q&A here. Just kicking it and talking about some questions. But yeah,
it was fun.
yeah, it was fun. Like, thank you. So it's kind of hard. I don't know how to like thank people more, and people say, "Oh, no, thanks." Like, just keep doing what we do, and it's like we
get
plan
our
on doing
hands
it.
and knees and
Yeah. Well,
thank you.
we plan on continuing. So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
All right. Well,
Thank you very much.
that's it.
Oh, Michael, usually
No. I didn't even want to say social media. It was just sweet.
Okay,
It's like,
sweet
see you,
and tender.
see you later. Caring mother, Lady Drew says goodbye.